have that drink now.
He's ready, Joe.
Not
Let me
yet.
have another drink. It's okay. Just, Trish, don't take my water. On my own. Okay. Calling to order the regular meeting of the Tiverton Town Council for Monday, January 7th, 2017. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk?
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor LeBeau.
Yep.
Councilor Ryan.
Present.
Councilor Hilton.
Present.
Councilor Shabbat.
Present.
Councilor DiMederos. Present. Councilor Edwards.
Present. It's the 9th.
Thank you.
Mr. President. It's the 9th today.
What'd she say?
She said the 7th. Today's the 9th.
She thinks it's Sunday. Oh, Saturday.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Madam President. Consent agenda. CA 1A, approval of special council meeting minutes of December 8th, 2016. B, approval of special council meeting executive session minutes, December 8th, 2016. C, approval of regular council meeting minutes of December 19th, 2016. D, approval of executive session minutes, December 19, 2016. Councilor LeBeau abstains, recused. CA2, receipt of minutes from the following boards and commissions. A, Board of Canvassers, 12. CA3, correspondence, receive and file. A, Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District requesting appropriation for fiscal year 17-18. B, presentation by Conservation Committee at Tiverton Library on January 18th, 2017 regarding underground heating oil storage tanks. CA4, Attorney Benson for I knew I'd get this one wrong. Farrowbank Farms, Inc., application for zoning amendment for solar energy systems, referred to the Planning Board. CA5, Mark Rousseau, Administrative Officer for Planning Board, activity report for November 2016. CA6, Town Administrator, Fire and Police Department, overtime reports, December 2016. CA7, Town Administrator, monthly department reports for December 2016. CA8, Chief Lloyd, distribution only of the multi-hazard mitigation plan for action on January 23rd, 2017. CA9, approval of proclamation for Project Purple Week, January 23rd through the 27th. CA10, Attorney Jeffrey Meyer, scheduling of public hearing on abandonment of small portion of Riverside Drive, Plat 302, Lot 208, on February 13th, 2017. CA11, Town Administrator, RFP for trash collection services for distribution only. Any items to be discussed by the council?
Madam President, I'd like to remove CA3B.
Any others? Hearing none, can I have a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion and second, all those in favor? Unanimous. CA3A, Ms. Hilton.
I would just like to make note of an event that the Conservation Commission is having regarding underground storage tanks. It does not affect a huge number of folks in the community, but if you're one of the some 300 or so people who has an underground oil heating storage tank, I would strongly encourage you to attend. It's on January the 18th at the Tiverton Public Library. Thank you.
I have a motion for CA3B.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Open public forum and announcements, comments, and questions. I have one item, Eugene Geisen for retrofit lighting buildings. Eugene, can you come up to the podium and state your name and address and tell us what you'd like to discuss or bring to the council's attention?
Eugene Jason, 3572 Main Road, Tiverton. What I want to discuss is there's been several years that I've been doing
You can-
lighting.
You can stand at the podium.
Oh,
Or you can sit if you like too.
that's fine.
Thanks, Eugene.
No, thank you. So, I'm an electrical contractor, and I've been doing retrofit lighting for about 3 years through a company, Energy Source. They're a expediter for National Grid, and what I specialize in is lighting on and around buildings, and it's a large portion of my work, so I'm pretty familiar with it. A few years ago, I helped them approach a school department. They wanted to do all the schools, and they gave in a proposal for that, and the proposal was denied. They gave in another proposal that gave them completely free, the job was gonna be completely free, because the way these things work is there's a certain amount of money allotted each year through the green programs, through National Grid, and they need to spend this money, and it comes off of everybody's electric bill. In the bottom of your bill, you'll see a little thing that says energy conservation fee. That all masses up. That's how they pay for solar lighting, solar electric programs. They pay for insulation, lighting, motors, like your air conditioners, boilers. There's a lot of things that they can do to help save energy. And they put these programs available for businesses and the public and municipal departments. And so there's several different ways that they can put these things together for towns. Tiverton is one of the last towns in the state that hasn't taken advantage of this program. And so it was near the end of the year on the high school, and they needed to spend money, which is, they had too much money to spend at the end of the year, which is a very rare thing. So they offered the high schools through the school department, I'm not sure exactly which official said it, but he said no to a completely free program. That wasn't gonna cost the town a single penny. They would have been saving all the energy right from day one. And I tried to approach them quite a few times, and it was just not approachable. I could never get a meeting, couldn't get anywhere. They finally went with one of the agents from National Grid, along with one of the agents of their company, and they were denied. So they walked away from Tiverton. And we let the town rest. Until recently, I heard that there is a small grant to improve the lighting in this building of about $5,000, I think it is. And when I heard that, I just wanted to come here and give an opportunity for everybody to understand how these programs work, and that probably shouldn't spend the grant on the lighting. They should let the energy conservation programs pay for the lighting and use the grant for something that doesn't have that kind of help. And so what happens is in my situation, I don't do the energy program work, I just do the work. And if I work here or I work somewhere else, there's constant work for me to do. So, but what they do is they would come in, give you an energy audit, count all the lights that are there. They're typically supposed to go one for one. Energy Source tries to do really hard to make people happy. So sometimes they add in another light if you have a shadowed area, or upgrade the type of light that you have for something that pleases you. Things like that. They do try to work for you. So what happens is they give you a program, you get to look at it, discuss it, decide if that's what's right for you, and if you like it, you sign it. Then they buy all the materials, they send a crew, either me or somebody else or whoever happens to be available at the time, one of their construction crews, and they come in, they change all the lights, and in most cases, so there's two ways that, basic ways that people choose. Some, because there is a cost to it. And the cost can either be put directly on your electric bills for each place. Then you never get a bill, you never pay any money. And which is the goal, especially with that type of lighting. The cost of doing the retrofit gets balanced into your electric bill, and you start saving money right away, month one. You're paying less money on your electricity, and you have new lights throughout all your facilities. So now, the best way to take advantage of the program is to put the whole town in as a municipal program. That way, whatever's not done in the schools, all the Department of, the DPW, the fire stations,
Police and
any building that you have, libraries. We would even look at the new library, because as much as it's a shock, brand-new buildings don't always have the most efficient lighting. Sometimes a brand-new building gets built up, we go in and we change out the lamps, or we change out something, and you end up saving money on it. I'm right now working in the town of Johnson. You can call them for reference. They're very happy with the program. In the town of Johnson, we're doing the whole town. I've already done 2 fire stations, the municipal court, the DPW. I start on the police station next Monday. They are doing the lighting inside and out. They did their garage doors on their facilities. They're doing some of the insulation that's missing and needed. They're doing all the air conditioners that are outdated. They did 5 or 6 of their boilers, put in new boilers. And in their case, in the whole thing, it's millions of dollars for their contract. They chose to pay $250,000 because they didn't want to have it on their bill. I think that's the way, and they save a little bit more money. If you pay the portion ahead of time, you can save some money on the financing. They give you a little bit more of a break. They chose to pay some money up front, and they had all this stuff done. So they're very happy, and they're going to save a lot of money. And along with the program, you don't have as much to spend on maintenance because the fixtures are brand new and they're going to last a long time. Most everything we put in now is LEDs. They have a very long life. And if something goes bad, like in the first couple of years, I'm sure that it's at least a 2-year full warranty, parts and labor. Every once in a while, there's something like a product problem or something. They send me back, I go change it out. There's no bill, there's no problem, no hassle. So it's really something that the town should consider. I've given my name and number, and we can give a program, come and count all the lights and look at all the different things, and you guys can discuss it later. But I would urge you not to jump forward and spend $5,000, which goes nowhere in a building like this, towards lighting, when you don't have to pay anything and you can get a beautiful job. That's what I have
Gene,
to say.
do you have paperwork on who turned you down, so we can see why?
No,
No?
sorry.
You don't want to tell?
It's obtainable, but it's been about 3 years. Maybe they didn't understand the program. Last year, we gave a proposal to the fire department, and they turned that down. But when you're doing just one building, you don't get as good of a proposal as you do if you throw in the whole town, because obviously there's volume involved in purchasing and in the sales and things like that. So the best way to take care of the issue is to let us look at the whole town and give you a comprehensive bid on everything that they can do for you. And it's fantastic. You really should take a good look at this.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name.
Jason,
Okay, so, Mr. Jason, do you have to apply for it at a certain time of the year, or does it start like in
You-
the monies?
yeah, you can apply for it at any time.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me to do it a a month and a half ago, I would have said, wait till the new year, because the program was ending and they were running out of money.
Okay, that's
So
what I...
when they
yeah.
run out of money,
Yep,
they say, we can still do it, but we can't give you as good a deal. So the
Right.
deal dissipates. And that's part of what was happening with the fire department. They had a deal, I told them, if you want to do it now, if you want to wait a little bit, maybe we can get you a better deal
Yeah.
when the year turns over. And here we are, ready to give a better deal, so
Yeah.
it's, I've done 9 buildings in this town, and I have not had a bad word said. And everybody's happy. And some buildings in this town I've done 3 times over the last 10 years. So if people repeat, it's because it's working well for them, right? So it's a good program.
Madam President, regardless who's turned Eugene down before, I have not. I met him for the first time this evening. We've exchanged contact information, and I need his help. We've done a lot of the audits, and we should probably review, when we meet, we will review that together. We are very focused on lighting and cooling this building. This is a huge draw for us in terms of our energy usage. So that's what I'll be trying to explore with Eugene going forward.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you.
so-
Thank you
so-
for bringing
some-
this to our attention.
Thank you, you're welcome. We can do an audit for one building, and then you can expand it to the whole town if you want. I mean, there's a lot of ways that it can work.
Thank you. If you could work with the administrator, we'd
I'll be
greatly
happy to.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing and presentation. We have Hoag Shahady and Company, PC, the annual financial report year ending June 30th, 2016. Hi.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Connors. I'm the manager on the audit for the town from Hagen Sahadi. And today I have 2 reports to present to you. One is the financial statements, and the other is the single audit report. And we'll start with the financial statements. So this is going to be financial representation for the town as of June 30, 2016. And it's a pretty thick report. I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight, but I do want to highlight some of the more important areas that I think I should bring to your attention. So we had a very smooth audit this year, and a lot of that is due to the work by Denise and really everyone at Town Hall and also at the school department. We work closely with Doug Fiore, and he does a great job preparing for us, so thank you to them. If we start on page 5, this is our audit opinion, and if you were to read through, you'd see we issued a very clean audit opinion. There was no issues noted. We had very few entries to book throughout the year during the audit, and really what that means is the information that you're being provided on a month-to-month basis is pretty reliable information. Pages 8 through 16 are the MD&A, and if you want to read this at some point, this is a nice synopsis of everything that happened during 2016. I'm going to cover a lot of this material as I move through, so I'm going to skip on to page 18. Pages 18 through 21 are your government-wide financial statements, and I know there's some new council members, so I want to bring some of these individual items to your attention, especially as it relates to the liabilities on page 19. On page 19, there is an other post-employment benefit obligation on the books recorded right now at $6.8 million. And that's, your other post-employment benefit is if everyone were to retire that was eligible for health insurance, that's what would be owed. That $6.8 million number doesn't represent the full amount that would be owed. This is what's called an obligation, and it was the same as was with the pension 2 years ago. So over time, this obligation has accrued the amount that would need to be paid to start to fund the liability. And in 2018, that full liability is going to hit the books. If it were to hit the books in 16, it would have been $21.3 million. So you're going to see there's going to be a significant restatement in a couple years, and that's going to put the town in line with the governmental accounting standards. So I just wanted to note that as something that's going to be coming in a couple of years. The 2 pension liabilities underneath that, the ERS, which is the teachers, and the MERS, which is the municipal employees, That $21 million is a pretty significant liability, but I want to point out those are state plans, so the town doesn't have the opportunity to overfund that plan in a given year and reduce that liability. The state gives you an amount, they say this is what you're going to give us as your required contribution, and at the end of the year they tell us what amount is recorded as a liability on your books. So those two are, in a way, out of the control of the town. But the item right underneath that, the 5.7, this is your police net pension liability, that's the town's private plan. It was funded in excess of the required contribution in 2016, so it was funded almost $200,000 more than was anticipated or than what was required. Unfortunately, the market didn't do as well as was anticipated or well as hoped. So that plan, which was 67% funded in the prior year, was 62.6% funded as of June 30, 2016. That was a pretty common decrease that we saw across the board, so it wasn't just affecting Tiverton. But I'd also like to note 62.6% funded is significantly higher than most municipalities that we see. So while you always want that number to be as high as you can, the town is in a pretty good place. If we were to look at page 21, your governmental activities had a $220,000 turn back in the current year. And your bond rating agencies, your creditors, they're not necessarily looking at these specific portions of the financial statements because the pension liability is so new, the OPEB liability is going to be new. But that $220,000 turnback is really a culmination of additions to your capital assets, additions and reductions to your long-term debt. The financial statements that the bond rating agencies are really going to be looking at are pages 22 and 23, which are your governmental. These exclude your long-term liabilities, they exclude your long-term assets. And you'll see that there was, on page 23, there was a positive turnback of $214,000 in the general fund. This is mostly made up of tax revenue that came in higher than was budgeted. Tax revenue can kind of fluctuate each year as it relates to timing of when delinquency notices go out. Last year there was a little bit under budget, I believe, tax revenue. So if there's prior year less than budgeted, chances are the current year will be more than budgeted, which it was, and you saw a nice turnback. The school department had a very significant surplus in the current year of $1.1 million, and that's it's driven by a few things. Savings in their budget due to lower fuel costs, which did affect the town as well, but they're also very driven by their special education program. So they try to budget conservatively. They don't know how many students are going to be in district, how many students are going to be out of district. It's significantly more expensive to have them out of district. But there was a lot of savings in the special education line items. And I can go through those as we get further into the budgets and actuals later in the file. But I want to talk about on page 22 the fund balance. And this is something that last council had really wanted to learn more about. So I want to continue to bring it to your attention. So at June 30, 2016, there's $2.5 million in the general fund. And that's not to say there's $2.5 million worth of cash hanging around that can be used for whatever costs you'd prefer. There's really only $1.6 million worth of unassigned fund balance, which represented in 16 about 3.7% of your budget, which is generally towns prefer to have it be at least above 3.5%. So that is getting closer to the 3.5 for sure. Whereas the school they have $1.7 million that is already associated with construction costs, but the figure above that, the 1.67, that is money that they have to use it for school costs, which is why it's considered to be restricted, but it's not associated with any direct costs, and that represents just under 6% of their budget. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the school, if the liability were to come up that they couldn't pay for, it would fall to the town. The town ultimately would be responsible for that liability. So it's not very typical that we see the school department have a higher amount of fund balance than the general fund. Again, it's up to the council to decide where funds are allocated or where they're associated, but just something to keep in mind.
Excuse me, you said it's not very typical to have them have more than the school department to have more than the town does?
Correct.
So it isn't.
Pages 26 and 27 are the land acquisition fund and the school lunch fund. And there wasn't a lot of significant activity in the current year. The school lunch fund ran a surplus of $71,000, and the land acquisition had a deficit of 10 grand. So compared to the bottom line, nothing overly significant. Pages 29 and 30 are your fiduciary funds. The most notable one being the police pension trust. This is the 62.5% funded police pension plan. So if you wanted to have an idea of where those funds are being invested in, equities, mutual funds, that's what makes that up. Page 31 is the start of the notes to the financial statements. With the addition of the pension plan, GASB 67 and 68, there are a significant amount of notes to the financial statements now. It seems like they're only growing each year. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the few that I think are important for you to note. Starting on page 46. Pages 46 and 47 are your capital asset note. And this is going to give you a good representation of what type of assets the town is investing in. So if you were to look, you'd see land of $300,000 was purchased in the current year, machinery and equipment, infrastructure. So if you wanted a breakout of where the money is going for as far as your fixed assets, this is a nice breakout of that information. On page 47, you'll see the beginning of the long-term debt note. And you'll see under bond payable, there was a $10.7 million reduction in debt. This was a refunding that occurred, and that ended up saving the town a significant amount of money. I don't have the amount off the top of my head, but there was some good savings there. And it was replaced with an $8 million bond. Page 50 is the other post-employment benefit note. This is going to show you a breakdown of the total liability that is owed, the 21.36 that I was discussing on the bottom of page 50. As you can see, this liability is yet to be funded, but I know in speaking with Denise that the town is working towards setting up a trust fund, which is what a lot of municipalities that we're working with are looking to do. I think there's the interlocal, I believe, has a fund set up where many municipalities invest their assets in order to start to fund their other post-employment benefit liability. And on page 51, you'll see the breakdown of how we get that obligation, the 6.8 that's currently recorded on the books. Skipping over some of the state pension information, I think it's more relevant to talk about your private plan, starting on page 74. So again, the total liability is $15.2 million. 9.5 represents your financial position as of June 30, 16, which gets us to the 62.5% funded. Underneath that, the actuarial assumptions, there's a 7.5% discount rate. This is your anticipated investment rate of return over time. That is the same rate that the state uses. So while this rate does have a significant impact on the liability that's shown, and I'll show you just how significant that impact is, the town is in line with the figure that the state is using. So they're comparable. On the bottom of page 75, you'll see that if that discount rate is either 1% higher or 1% lower, you're going to have a pretty significant impact on what that liability ends up being recorded at. Page 80 is the start of the budget in actual. This is usually the most important area for the council to take a look at, compare what was budgeted, what actually happened, and reasons for any significant variances. Again, as I noticed at the top of page 80, or as I noted, there were general property taxes that were favorable in the current year of $246,000. That's just a timing compared to the prior year, but it's always nice to see more money come in than is anticipated. There was some savings under the public safety line, and that is something we've seen across the board too with lower fuel and oil costs. So there was some significant savings of about $82,000. On page 81, you might notice the use of fund balance has an unfavorable variance of $368,000. That is a figure that is used to balance the budget, anticipating that some of the fund balance would be used in the current year. And so it's not as though there was revenue out there that didn't come in. It's just a means of balancing the budget. And another item that you're going to see not included here, but it was included on pages 22 and 23, is $175,000 contingency liability that was owed by the town. So for GAAP purposes, we do show it as an expense, but since it wasn't budgeted for, we're not going to show it as a budgeted expense. Page 82 is the school unrestricted fund. I know that you may not have a lot of opportunities to look at the school's finances, but there was quite a bit of savings on the expenditures, which led to that $1.1 million turnback. The most notable being employee benefits of $271,000, which was due to significantly lower health costs than anticipated in 2016. And under purchase services and supplies and materials, you'll see very sizable variances. And again, that's due to conservative budgeting for the special education program. Costs came in a lot less than they expected them to, and that led to a very significant surplus. The remaining pages of the financial statements are a breakout of more other post-employment benefit information, required pension information, something that we really haven't already discussed. What we do show in the back too is a breakout of each individual fund. So if you wanted to look up a specific Title I grant fund, you could. But I'm going to skip to the back to page 140. Oh, 144, excuse me. This is a breakout of your legal debt margin. So it's 3% of your total assessed value of your land, which that 3% works out to be $59 million is the amount that the town is allowed to have in bonded debt. And as of June 30, 2016, there was $33.6 million of actual bonded debt. So that's a nice, healthy, positive variance of $25.6 million underneath the legal debt margin. So that is a breakout of your financial statements for 2016. I do have a report on the single audit, but if you have any questions on the financial statements, I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
Any questions from the council?
Great. The second report you have in front of you is the single audit. And what the single audit represents is federal dollars that both the town and school receive combined. And if that total amount of federal dollars that are spent exceeds $750,000, we're required to test compliance. So this year, there was $1.3 million in total that the town and school received combined. So we selected testing of the special education program. And what we do is we make sure that the costs associated with the program are allowable, that they're paying for costs that fall within what's allowed underneath the grant. We test various aspects. We test procurement to make sure any bids or quotes are received properly in accordance with Rhode Island law. And I'm happy to report that we did not have any non-compliance noted during that process. So that is all I have to report to you.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Jeff Broadhead, Prism, and George Woodbury, Solux, presentation on municipal streetlights.
Madam President, if I could just introduce the topic very briefly. For first I'd like to introduce George. George is with Solux, but George, in your history as a professional, you've been deeply involved in streetlight conversions in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and other places and saved a lot of people a lot of money. And to make it as simple as I can, because it's going to get pretty detailed. Long story short, in our country, public utilities are part of a bargain that was hard fought over many years of legal cases and negotiation. In exchange for acceptance of very heavy degrees of regulation, the utility companies are guaranteed what's called a reasonable rate of return. And so they fully load all of their charges to their customers with their entire fixed asset loading, all the overhead. Everything that comes to the bottom line on the expense side is costed out to what is charged to the customer on the end, plus the reasonable rate of return. It's about as simple as I can make it. And what we do when we look at individual products is we begin to unbundle what they're charging us and recognizing the fact that for some things, like streetlights, there's a tremendous amount of overhead that has nothing to do with street lighting that is paid as part of our streetlight bill. The guys from Prism, with George's help, and Prism is a creation of the West Bay Planning Collaborative, a lot of activity before the Public Utilities Commission was carried on for a couple of years with the aid of some of the state's best utility and environmental lawyers. Seth Handy was very much involved in this. And the PUC eventually acquiesced and ordered Grid to participate in a program of selling streetlights to the municipalities and working out a formula for calculating the price and for altering the tariff rates so that Grid will still recover some of its transmission costs on the backside, but in the grand scheme of things, this is going to save any community that is able to participate a significant amount of money. And with that, I'll let George hopefully handle almost everything, because it's very detailed, and our relationship with Prism was largely because we were so ably helped that we wanted to delegate that responsibility to Prism to do these negotiations and come up with these facts and figures. Thanks, George.
Thank you very much. Is this mic on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. But I can speak loudly so that, do we know how many Russians it takes to change a light bulb? No, because they thought it was supposed to be like that. So, I retired from the military in 1995. I was a colonel in the Corps of Engineers, and I had been the director of public works at Fort Knox, Kentucky, which is the sixth largest city in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the largest single electric utility load for Louisville Gas and Electric. And I was the municipal power company director as part of my duties. And I, in the course of 2 years, reduced my energy costs by 24% by addressing energy demand. And that's what started me into this interest in energy. And when I went to Lexington, Mass. As the DPW director back in 1995, I discovered that one of the largest bills I had was my streetlight bill. It cost me about $500,000 a year on an $8.9 million budget, so it was fairly significant. And I wrote the legislation in Massachusetts in 1996 that allowed cities and towns to take control of the streetlights from the utility company. And then in 2013, Jeff Broadhead, working through the Washington County Regional Planning Council, passed Rhode Island General Law 30-39, which provided for the same benefits to the cities and towns of Rhode Island. PRISM was formed because streetlights are a whole lot more complicated than just changing light bulbs. And we can get into that if you want. I'm happy to answer questions. We'll touch on some of the intricacies of it tonight very briefly. But it also requires a lot of staff time. You have to manage the contractor. You have to understand the ins and outs of the lighting business and managing these systems. And in my experience in Massachusetts, in looking at communities trying to do this individually and on their own, I came to the conclusion that the best way to do this is to centrally manage it. So form a collaborative, have all the communities come together. It's going to give you more buying power for the purchasing of materials. It's going to get you outside management, so for the town, it's a single phone call if you have an issue, and it's just much simpler over the long haul than having to get somebody in the town trained up and have to manage all of this for you. So that was the goal of PRISM, was to centrally manage this and also to bring significant buying power to the table. And I'll give you an example. The city of Worcester has 14,000 streetlights. In December of 2014, they entered into a contract with Honeywell, who subsequently hired Rise Engineering to convert their street lighting to LEDs. They have 14,000 lights, and the estimated cost of that project is $9.1 million. And they really have only converted, I think, a few thousand of their lights as of today. In Rhode Island, PRISM was given the task in late November to do the city of Providence with 17,000 streetlights. We didn't get the paperwork from National Grid until March, and as of today, that project is finished. And it cost the city $8.1 million. So it's 3,000 more lights for $1 million less, and we finished it in 6 months. So as a result, the city's savings start, and they're getting the benefit of the project. So that's what PRISM is all about, is trying to help the communities in Rhode Island do this and provide expertise to them so that these projects come in at the best price and the best possible service. What I wanted to do tonight was just kind of bring you up to date, because we wrote you an initial report last fall. And at that time, we provided estimates of what all your costs were going to be. So I wanted to kind of bring you up to date as to what's happened since then and kind of where we're at today. Just by way of understanding, what you're currently spending for about 1,280 streetlights today is about $182,000 a year. Now, I'll tell you, effective the 1st of January, National Grid raised the distribution energy rate by 24%. So that number is going to go north of where it was. You're currently spending about $36,000 for the energy supply from direct through the REAP program, and you spend $19,000 a year for, and you all have these figures in a handout? Oh.
Thank you. Makes it easier.
Thank you.
Guess I get my hand to rest on. I was scribbling away there.
No, I'll give you a rest here. So, the top table, you're currently spending about $182,000 a year, and the fixture charges, the top line there is $125,000. Now, what's baked into the fixture charges is the maintenance of the light, the depreciation of the asset, transmission charges, which is any voltage above 69,000 volts. So those are the cost of those high voltage lines that's embedded in the cost. And their profit, typically 10 or 11% profit. What happens when a town acquires the streetlights, that cost all goes away. Now, the transmission piece of it, though, is an energy charge, so it has to move over and be picked up on the delivery side of the equation. So if you go down and you look at the supply N-Grid distribution charges, you'll see when N-Grid owns it, they're $19,922, but because of the transmission charges sliding over, if you own it, that jumps to $30,000. The result, though, of buying the lights and then paying for an outside contractor to maintain the systems, and that's all built into this in the projected maintenance cost of $38,000 a year, the town will save $76,000 a year without doing anything. Now, we were originally told the purchase price of your street lighting assets was $65,380. The latest figure I've seen is under $37,000. So your return on investment is about 6 months. And after that, it's gravy. Our experience so far, though, has been our maintenance costs have actually been lower than we've projected. So that $38,000 has some contingency in it also for the driver or the plow that gets a little crazy and knocks down a pole and that we have to fix. Now, by the way, when you buy the lights, you don't own the telephone poles. You only own the mast arm and the fixture unless it's a dedicated pole. Now, you all have 49 post-top lights in your neighborhoods. The colonial style, direct buried, so you have some of those. You own all of that. And if there's any aluminum, you know, the 30-foot aluminum ones, I think you have a few of those too. Not very many. In fact, I can tell you exactly if you want to know. Three. I knew you had a couple, but in any case. All right, so the next step is once you acquire the lights, one of the things you can do to further increase your savings is go to the newest technology, LEDs. And why do you do that? A typical high-pressure sodium light, that's what you have now, these yellow lights, has a life expectancy of about 6 years, 24,000 hours. So they have to be changed out every 6 years. Typical replacement repair rates for the existing system is about 18 to 20% of your system will have to be serviced every year. When you go to LEDs, that drops to below 1%. So all of those maintenance costs essentially go away for a large extent. In addition, the LED lights come with a 10-year warranty and use 35%, use 65% less energy. So you get savings on the energy side, you get savings on the maintenance side, and you have a much more reliable system. In addition, LED lights are much more effective at directing the light onto the roadway, so you get more uniform lighting and better lighting. Now, the biggest mistake that most folks make when they do LEDs is they match the lumen levels, and it tends to be way too bright. Now, one of the other things that we've talked about is the AMA came out with an article here in the last 6 months where they talked about the effect of nighttime lighting on people's sleep patterns. And LEDs tend to have a lot of blue light in it, which affects your production of melatonin. And the production of melatonin is what's necessary for sleep. They've gotten a lot of flack over this report. Because, you know, that street light in front of your house versus what you've got going on inside your house, your TV, your laptop, your cell phone, your bedside light, and all of those things are really the elephant in the room. But nevertheless, there's been a lot of discussion about it, and folks have tended to think that they want to do what the AMA has recommended, and that's go to what they call the 3,000 Kelvin or the warmer color temperature light. In reality, if you put the two different lights up and ask people to look at it, people tend to prefer the warmer color anyway. So it's a positive thing. And so one of the decisions that we have made is that what we would do in Tiverton is we would use the 3,000 Kelvin lights. Now, if you want a very good example, that back corner fluorescent light, there's one tube in there that's 3,000 Kelvin and one tube in there that's 4,000 Kelvin. So you can look up at it and see kind of the color difference between the two if you're curious. So one of the issues, though, with the 3,000 Kelvin lights is who makes them, and the ones that you can get are limited. You don't have as broad a choice as you would. So this causes us to have to look at what's out there and identify what the best solution is. And at the same time, we have to account for the fact that N-Grid bills your LED lights based on a tiered structure. So if the LED light is anywhere between 1 and 50 watts, it's billed as if it's 25 watts. Whether it's 49 watts or 19 watts, if it's between 1 and 20, it's billed at 10, 20 and 40, it's billed at 30, 40 and 60, it's billed at 50, 60 to 100, it's billed at 80. So that's how the tiers work. So ideally, we want to find the right light to meet your needs that always falls just under the tier, so that we're gaming National Grid's billing system. And that's what I've done with your design. In order to replace most of the lights in the town, we need something that's about 20 watts. So we selected a 19 watt setting. And then I personally did the design. So we audited your lights. And as a result of the audit, I had detailed information about every light in the town, where it was, and what was going on there. And I used that, and I also used Google Earth Street View so I could personally kind of visit some sites myself. And I came up with a design. And then on the back of this sheet I gave you, what I want to show you is what the result of that was. So we spent about 1,200 lights times $8 to do the audit. And as a result of that, what's happened is the project cost went from $562,000 to $488,000. This is on the lower one. And this is instead of doing what, for example, Cranston is going to do, which is a one-for-one replacement, where whatever was there, we're going to replace it with what was there. And the problem with that is that National Grid put up what was on their truck. And when Mrs. Smith called and complained to the council that her light wasn't bright enough and she needed more light in front of her house back in 1933 or 43 or whenever it was, she got a brighter light because nobody cared. And today, she's gone. In fact, there's been 2 generations since that light was put there, but it's still there, and it's out of place where it is. So neighborhoods should be lit one way, your collectors and arterials another way, and your main commercial areas another way. So that was one of the other objectives I had in doing your design. And in the process of that, you get rid of those oddball high wattage lights, and you clean the whole thing up. And that's what we've done. And the outcome of that is we've saved about $80,000 overall on the project by doing a proper design. So the top table shows you the original LED estimates of what your end-grid costs would be, what your direct energy costs would be, what the maintenance administration would be, and what the total cost would be to the town. And so your total savings is $139,000. And that $139,000 would be used to pay the purchase price and to pay for the project. You'll see there's only a very small difference in the annual savings between the design and the original estimate, and that's because we're using a much more expensive fixture. So I had to game this to make it work. And by changing the way I did this, that's how we were able to actually bring the project cost down using better quality, more expensive fixtures. So in addition to that, we're going to get 2 grants. And one of them I brought with me this evening that's ready for signature. One comes from National Grid, and it's an incentive to save the energy. The other one will come from the Office of Energy Resources. I will complete that application and submit it to Matt for signature. Between the 2 grants, we'll get a little over $95,000 a year towards the project, one-time grant. So what we have down below is what the outcome of this is. It shows you the amount that we would need to finance. That includes the purchase price, what the lease payments would be, and all my original estimates were based on 3%, but the offer we have on the table right now is 2.69%. The advantage of a lease is it's a operating expense. It's not a borrowing, and as a result, it doesn't affect your debt levy or bond limit. That has no impact on that. So after the lease payment, your final savings would be about $83,000 a year until the lease is paid off, and then it'll jump to the $139,000. And these leases have no prepayment penalty. So you pay whatever interest would have been due that year, and that's the only penalty that you pay for paying it off early. So if you did a bond a couple of years from now and just wanted to pay this thing off, you could do that. I've done over 100 of these projects in 13 states, and I love it. Absolutely love it. You know, it's the one thing where I can come in, I can give you numbers like this, and at the end of the day, they'll be this good or better. And yet the numbers are so incredible, people look at me and say, this is too good to be true. But this is why we passed this law.
George,
The utilities don't like me much.
I got a question for you.
Please.
So on that lease, you said it was 2.69%. Is that a fixed interest rate, and what's the duration?
10 years.
10 years, and that's fixed?
It's fixed.
Okay. And then when it comes to your maintenance and administration, that 31,784, is that an annual amount as like a retainer, or is this something that you guys determine based off of what happens?
The way Prism is doing this is we said, you know, I've been doing this a long time. I've been setting up these, so I know kind of what it's going to cost. And plus, we went out to bid and we got firm prices from our contractor for everything. We don't know the frequency it's going to occur, so that's up to my judgment to figure that out. We also build in a contingency, because if you have to dig up an underground in one of those neighborhoods with the post tops, that's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And if a plow knocks over a lamp, that can be expensive, so we have a contingency in there. The goal is, I'm an old DPW guy, so you can't get that out of me. At the end of the year, we're going to have money left over. Prism doesn't keep that. It belongs to the town, so we collect it from you on a monthly basis. We put it into a pot, we use that to pay the contractor, and at the end of the year, whatever's left, we go to Matt and say, Matt, this is how much we had left. What do you want to do with it?
Gotcha. Okay. And so we would assume basically 1/12 would be coming out of that 31,784 on a monthly basis, and then at the end of the year, we'd possibly get some money back, or
Yes.
if our, plow
Yes.
guys go on a rampage and take out a bunch of lights, maybe we're going to give you some more money,
Yes.
which could happen. Now, the other question I have for you is, again, back to that plow analogy you used. I'm not jinxing us. In that situation, let's say they hit a pole. It's a National Grid pole, and we just own that fixture. What happens? Does National Grid come out and they put up a new pole, and then our contractors have to go out and do the light thing, or
Right.
okay,
Exactly. So once National Grid gets the new pole up, then we go attach the light. Our guys have to respond within 2 hours of an emergency to render the scene safe, collect any town equipment, secure it. That's part of their contract.
typically in a situation like that, typically how long does it take for the pole to go back up from National Grid and the light to go back up after that?
Well, the light will go up the day after the pole goes up and everything is secure, and we've been given the go-ahead to attach. But the problem is, at that point, then we can't reconnect to National Grid's lines. We have to call National Grid and have them reconnect, because we're not allowed to attach their stuff.
Okay. So 2-3 days, we get the light back.
We'll be done in 2 to 3 days,
Okay.
I can assure you.
If there's a car accident, who goes after the insurance?
The
Will you guys-
contractor would want us to let him go after it and let him handle it, because he'll make more money. What he charges you and what he charges the insurance company will be two different numbers.
So it'll be the insurance burden, not Tiverton's burden.
That's correct.
One other question with the insurance thing. Let's say, again, hypothetically speaking, somebody's driving down the street and light falls off of one of the poles and hits somebody's car. Is that town liability, or is that going to go back to the contractor who originally put the light up?
Well, we require the contractor to carry insurance that indemnifies the town related to his work. The question is, the person whose car was hit is going to sue everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically how it works. They'll sue National Grid, they'll sue the town, and they'll sue us. And the courts will have to decide who is at fault. If National Grid is trying to do everything they can to protect themselves in the agreements that you sign with them against their having any liability, but I think you can't walk away from gross negligence. And if that pole is in a horrible condition and the attachment points were no longer solid because National Grid wasn't maintaining the pole, it's difficult to say how the courts might rule in that case. But you will be required to carry insurance also.
Excuse me, if I may.
Yeah.
Just one thing, and of course, your insurance carrier is the Rhode Island Interlocal Risk Management Trust. There is a provision in the contract you have before you that would require your insurer to have the third party here, the company, as the loss payee. That's not something that your policy contemplates. We've already said this to the company, not only through Matt, but also with other communities too. Basically, when it comes to liability here, the way I read the contract is who's ever negligent will end up having the liability for this. So it depends on what the issue was. Was it a faulty installation? Was there some other type of action that led to the accident? Could be, the person driving the car was just operating the vehicle negligently. That's the situation. You do have insurance coverage. These guys have to have insurance coverage too, but I can tell you that your insurer does not allow for any additional insureds or loss payees. And that's one thing that needs to be adjusted in this contract.
I'm not sure I'm clear on what you're saying. The only people that gets, maybe you better explain what you mean by.
Section 9.3 on page 22 of 43 of the Nat Grid contract lists this phrase in the third line, under which company shall be named as an additional insured. The town's insurer, which is a risk pool. Not unlike, by the way, what you're doing. It's communities together. They don't, that's not part of the contract. We can't have any loss pays or additional insureds. That needs to be stricken from the contract.
Interesting, because in Massachusetts, MIA, the Massachusetts Insurance Program, they provide this insurance for all cities and towns that buy their lights at no cost.
Okay. We're 2 miles away from that, so.
2 decades.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Actually, as a follow-up to that question, has Prism done anything? I know you guys did Providence, which I believe Providence self-insures, but has Prism done anything with any other cities or towns that are part of the interlocal trust?
Well,
I can tell you right now, for the other communities I represent, this is the same advice that we've given. I know other solicitors that are in the interlocal trust have said the same. The reason for this is we've asked the trust, what do we do here? And that's been the clear direction.
Okay.
So have those other towns modified the contract?
Yes.
The beauty of this program, if you talk to Alan Seppi, they had a big event on Washington Street, and we had a meeting with him on Tuesday, and he said, geez, we've got this thing going on in 2 weeks. Is there any chance we could get the lights done on Washington Street? On Thursday, it was done. The other day, we were out at a light. Somebody complained because it wasn't as bright as the rest of the ones in the neighborhood. So we went out there to look at it, and we have the control system, so I can go onto my laptop and I can tell you exactly what the light's doing, what wattage it's operating at, what its condition is and everything. We're out there, 3 of us in our suits, in front of this lady's house, and she's peering out through the window. So I got out of the car and I walked up and I knocked on her door and I said, here's why we're here. Your husband called and he's absolutely right. This light is not right. We'll have it fixed for you tomorrow. Can you imagine getting that level of service from National Grid? Everybody that calls gets a call back from us. When you call us, our service center, you talk to a person. Pet peeve of mine.
Yeah. I'm sure it's probably a pet peeve for a lot of people. Any other questions from the council?
Now, can you break this down on an annual basis for us? I mean, what the initial investment would be?
Well, I think the way we'd be scoring this in the budget is starting off with the understanding if we do absolutely nothing and we just keep the asset base that we have now, as George pointed out, it's about $182,000 nowadays. There's going to be some offsets, George. So that energy cost is going to go up on one side, and then direct energy is dropping our rate. a little over a penny in a few months. What we would be doing here instead is, in the capital side of the budget, we would have a 10-year note for, do your math, $48,000 or so. Am I correct, George? And then we would have the energy cost and everything else that we have to bear during the year that's still an operating cost, which is I think is the estimate that he provides. Is that on the front?
The maintenance administration costs are about 31.
31,000
Yep,
Annually?
annually.
annually.
Well, that's your maintenance administration, so you have to add back the direct energy and your N-grid, so it's really 42. The budget would be, the operating side of the budget would be 42, and the debt portion would be 48. So we're taking a $182,000 expenditure and reducing it to about 90.
But the initial is on the budget now is 150.
So I'm going to pass out a version of the budget where I've adjusted the math. So just for everybody to,
Just looking at.
yeah, so I mean, normally, a good best practice would be to avoid any interest charge at all, to the extent that you can, and finance over the life of the payback period. Just get to the end of, when you get to the end of the payback period, you're done with the project, and you save on the interest. So that was where I came up with 150 over the course of 3 years, just to bang it out. But we don't have to do that. And when we're being offered 2.7% money, 2.6% money over 10 years with no prepayment penalty, if you get that one-time capital gain and you just want to wipe this out, it's a digestible morsel that you can wipe off the budget.
The way the cash flow will work, if you all give us the go-ahead, we're going to place the order for the materials. We're going to begin the process of putting the lease into place. We'll get the materials in about 8 weeks. So sometime in March, we would start construction. We would be finished with construction by April. So we would get savings about 10 grand in each of the months of May and June, except that National Grid will simply stop billing you. And while they try to figure out how to fix your bill to accurately reflect what we did. We're still waiting on Providence to get their first bill. They stopped billing them a long time ago.
So anytime you can make National Grid your bank, you're really doing well.
But in any event, that's the way it'll work.
Matt, could you give us that new number before we make this decision, what it would look like?
I think it's right
Instead
here.
of 150, what would it be that one?
55,583.
55,583.
Yeah, the actual number's slightly less.
Slightly less.
Slightly less than that, but not by more than $1,000.
Right, so you see that George's assumption is 3% money.
Yep.
Well, but the way this is structured and the way we delayed
Yeah.
the payment, it comes out to 53 something or other.
So so this would be 53K a year for 10 years?
Yes.
And the projected annual savings a year is, and does that include the one-time incentive and all that sort of stuff too?
Yes,
And the grant money?
yes.
So at the end of all that, it's 53K a year for 10 years.
That's right. So the amount financed is net of the incentive of the two grants.
Okay. And then the projected annual savings beginning in the first year is 83K. Is that correct?
Yes. The first full fiscal year.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about these lease payments. We're talking about it in the 2017, 2018 budget,
That's correct.
not in this budget.
That's right.
This gentleman is talking about proceeding immediately with implementation. And do we have money in the current budget? Or is this a delayed payment for the first piece of this to the next fiscal year instead of the current?
I don't know, and when we sought a quote, we didn't talk about the timing of
Excuse me.
the first payment.
They've offered us two options. One is that once you pay, once you sign up and you do all of this, that your first payment would be immediately due of $53,371.42. The alternative, which I think is a preferred alternative, is you delay that first payment for 1 year. That gives time for National Grid to get the billing straight, for you to have your accounts moving like they should. It also gives you the funds you need to pay all your vendors on time. And under that scenario, you would pay $54,807. So there's a $1,500 more per year to delay that first payment by 1 year.
Thank you,
The
George.
city of Providence pushed it all the way out to 2018, but that's because they had a $5 million budget shortfall they needed to try to make up. And it was complicated, but our objective was to reach a $3 million savings in this past fiscal year for them, and a minimum of $5 million by 2017.
Can you just say one more thing about, my understanding is this fund, the state incentive fund, is not going to be sufficient to pay everybody's incentive at the full ride. So if we want to enjoy this benefit, we should move sooner rather than later, because the state government has promised that if there's anything left in the kitty, Providence would get it. Is my understanding correct?
That's correct. We're in the process, Jeff and I are right now, of trying to get everybody lined up for money so they don't give it to Providence. Because Providence went from 4.2 million to under 400,000 on their bill. That's how much they're saving. So they're exceedingly pleased. We well exceeded what we promised them. So I want to get your incentive package submitted almost within the next few days. And I brought half of them with me tonight. The other half I'll get done, and I'll get to Matt right away. It's the second half that's in question, for OER grant money, because there was no additional funds approved for this year.
Okay. Any other questions?
Ms. Jones?
And just to clarify, this would be something that we'd be looking to do starting in next year's budget, not this year's budget.
That's right.
Well, I think we can address that when
And-
it shows up in new business.
And we're relatively confident that if we are to do this, and we plan on spending this 53K approximately a year for 10 years, that in next year's budget, we will still realize 83,000 in savings. So it's, the savings are going to come in the same, beginning in the same budget year that the expenditure happens.
Well, if I heard George correctly, the
Yes.
savings would start 3 months before that.
Yes.
The
And
savings
what's
will start-
interesting too, by the way, is I told you they raised the distribution energy rate for utility-owned streetlights by 24 point something or other %. For customer-owned lights, only 15%. So you get to leverage that too.
And other than Providence, has any other municipality in Rhode Island done this?
Well, we've done some lights in Central Falls. We have all the materials on order for North Smithfield, West Warwick, Central Falls, Charlestown, and we're getting ready to put together the package for Cumberland and North Providence. The biggest holdup has been National Grid in not getting us the paperwork, the purchase and sale documents.
Just to clarify, Tricia, what you said is that we would start paying 53K next year, but we wouldn't because we're delaying it, so it would be 54. Is that correct? Just to
Well,
make sure.
I don't think we can vote on that yet.
Pardon?
Okay.
No, but I think Tricia was saying that we would start paying 53 next year, and it's like, my understanding was no. If we delay it a year, it would be 54.
We're talking calendar year, not fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
So it would become due next fiscal year in the middle of the fiscal year. But by then, you will have accumulated the savings already from the streetlights to pay.
Okay. That's a good point.
Tony, any of the other towns in the trust like we are? As far as West Warwick and the ones he was talking about, are they in the trust?
They are, the ones that aren't. North Providence is not in the interlocal trust.
And neither is Johnston.
Johnston
is-
Johnston's in.
Okay.
They were in the river.
So we'd have to get that changed, that agreement that you were talking about before?
Yes, and there's actually, in the two agreements that are in your packet, 4 of the provisions would have to be changed. And the reason I say this is because you can't, the town would not be able to comply with that language.
Right. But that's something we'd have to do before we could vote on it. We'd have to make sure that that was done before we can vote on this?
If there was a vote tonight on it, I would recommend that the vote include just a provision that the 4 sections, I'll give you the numbers on
okay.
them, be deleted.
Yep, I just want to make sure of that.
And is there an increase in the maintenance cost over time? Or is the maintenance cost fixed for the term of?
Our intent
lease,
is to
or-
have it level. That's why we built it so that it's too much each year, so the amount that's left over in future years will be less and less. Again, it's the DPW in me wanting to give you something that's. Well, thank you very much. It's a real opportunity. My parents lived in Little Compton for 41 years. I used to get my fish right down the road here.
Still can.
So the opportunity to serve you guys is a real joy for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam President, if I could, I'd like to thank George for the extra effort. He was stranded in an airport and harassed everybody with his frequent flyer status and got #1 on a standby basis and was able to get here. So, thank you, George.
Town Council sitting as Board of Licensing, non-advertised licenses, James Gorman, Seconic River Grill, 524 Main Road, Lot 112, Lot 396, request for expansion of Seconic River Grill LLC restaurant, subject to meeting all legal requirements. Is James Gorman here? Hi. Hi, if you could explain a little bit about what changes you want to make to your business?
Yes, what we'd like to do is, there's an existing former beauty parlor next door to our restaurant, Seconic River Grill, and we'd like to move into that space, cut through the wall, go into that space and add what's actually going to turn out to be a net of 12 seats, but it would also give us a little bit more room in the existing space, so it's a little bit more comfortable for everybody in navigating and so on.
Very good. We have documentation here from licensing, from the building zoning official, Neil Hall, says it's proposed expansion is allowed by right. Any questions from the council?
Madam President, if I may, the purpose for this application is it's an existing license. But each license that is issued is for a premises. Because this premises is expanding, this is a technical amendment to what they already have, to acknowledge the fact that there will be an expanded footprint, so to speak, that is licensed by the town for the uses proposed.
So it'd be unit 526.
I just have one question for the solicitor. Are there any issues that would come up as a result of the liquor license expanding into a second unit?
No, but what they need to do is, in order to serve alcohol in the expanded space, the license has to reflect that. That's why they're here
Okay.
tonight. But as pointed out by Madam President, This is a by right use in this zone, so there's no zoning issues that are implicated.
No further questions from the council?
Madam President, the paperwork here is a little bit off. They have 8 seats new, not 12, so that might want to be adjusted so he doesn't have a problem when he gets in front of somebody. They say, oh, you only got blah, blah, blah. So these numbers just need to,
What are you looking at, Randy?
It says 64 seat
64
restaurant
seats going
is
to
now
72.
72.
Is it-
That's an increase of 8,
you
not
said
12.
12. Right, so you just fix those numbers. Because you're get in front of another board again over here, and they're going to say, oh, we'll see you in 3 months when we have time. And you don't need that.
No,
So just adjust them numbers.
we will.
So, yeah.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out.
I just know how it goes.
So now how do we adjust those numbers?
Make a motion, we grant him permission,
I-
provided he meets all legal requirements.
I'd like to
Which
second
it
that.
seems like he already has.
Can I just ask to adjust those numbers now? Should that be something that's done and brought back to you, or how does that work?
Well, we can just, we can
You just,
make it known now that it should be 76 instead of 72 seats.
You can have here's the thing, the way that I look at this, you're not approving seating. What you are approving is the outlines, the footprint of the licensed section, so it was nice that the information was supplied, but that's not what the relief is based on. It's about the size.
Yep.
So if he can fit the extra 12 in, good for him. If he can't, he can't.
Okay,
So I don't think you need to mention the seating.
fine.
Good, I just want to, I know how it works.
There'll be plans submitted which will, there'll
I
either
just
be
don't
room
want
for
you to
that.
go through any kind
No,
of
I hear you.
undue, unnecessary.
Hassles. Yeah, so, stay with my motion.
Second that.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Good luck.
Good luck.
Congratulations.
Have
Keep
good
them
food, too.
Captain
You have
Gray
good
burgers
food.
coming.
They're great.
Ain't they?
Burgers are good.
They are good. Appointments and resignations, none. Unfinished business, none. Financial business, none. For new business, item 1, discussion and action regarding disposition of settlement litigation, case number 01-15-0003-1203, Patrick White. I request a motion to carry this to after executive session for action.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor? Opposed?
I can't vote on that one, I don't think. I'll abstain.
You can do it.
We
'Cause
have,
I wasn't on the first page. They said, I recused myself from it, so I guess I got to do it again.
no, I don't, no.
No?
Not
Then I'm with you.
All right. Unanimous. Next, G2, Superintendent William Rurick, discussion of next steps moving forward for school bond approved by voters November 2016.
Madam President, Mr. Rurick is not able to make tonight's meeting, but he said he will discuss this at the special meeting, the joint workshop that we're having on
The 11th.
Thursday.
The 11th.
Wednesday.
The 11th.
Wednesday.
2 nights.
Workshop, January 11th. Next item, G3, Town Administrator, approval of agreement with National Grid for customer-owned street and area lighting attachments and agreement of sale previously distributed. I believe the solicitor has some updates to the contract or revisions.
I do, yes. There are 3 sections in the first agreement, G3-1, National Grid. Sections 9.3, 10.7, and 10.8 all have similar language requiring that the company be named, that's the language used, as an additional insured. In discussions and communications with your insurance carrier, they have told us that this language is not acceptable your insurance policy does not provide for any third parties being either additional insureds or lost payees. So I recommend that the language in those three sections be stricken. I've given that language out to Matt. In the second agreement, the agreement for sale, in Article 7, there is similar language. Again, that stricken language has been given to Matt. I recommend that that be stricken too, because you are unable to comply with that provision.
Madam President,
Yes, John?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agreement for, with National Grid, an area lighting agreement, the agreement for sale, pending those changes noted by the solicitor.
Second.
I have a motion second. Any discussion?
I do have a question. So, Matt, you're going to show us a version of the budget that does not have $150,000.
Right, so when we approach that point on the docket, Madam President, I'll be circulating the most recent update of the budget document. Now, I used the US Bancorp quote to revise the numbers, but when we get there, we can revise the numbers even further because they're going down.
Okay. And just to double check, and I'm trying to remember where it was, because I know it's in here. The existing electric bill is, and Hamus National Grid are on which page on this again?
I just had it.
So go to your Public Works section in the budget. It's going to be our 5,500 accounts,
14.
page 14.
14.
And that will be revised to reflect the cost estimate provided by George tonight. Now, he's being very precise, $42,859. You know,
On page 12.
I'm a little bit more comfortable with 44,000 in case there's a little bit of slippage there.
So
Or
I'm just
43.
looking at this streetlight number though. So in theory, this streetlight number is gonna go from 187K to 55K
To 43.
to 43K. Yep. Okay, just checking.
What page did you say?
Page 12 is streetlight. On the one we
Where's
had.
page 14?
On the new, on this one?
Oh, on the new one?
I'm looking at the old one,
I'm looking
because
at
that's
the
where my
old one.
notes were.
Yeah, the old one. Which one is the new one?
Did you distribute the new one?
No.
Is that what they're looking at?
We had one in the packet. This is a.
Just the old one, right. The only one we had.
It's the one that was clocked in.
Okay.
On
those are the
page
ones.
Right.
12, I'm looking at it.
Page 12.
Streetlights.
Page 14.
14 on the old
14.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I have the other one there now.
Yeah, you
I
do.
have the new one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's looking at the new one. Actually, I
Okay.
misspoke. It's the 3380 account.
380.
You actually have it at 55.
Right.
That number be revised down?
The number's going to go down.
Any other questions? So just for clarification on the motion, it's to approve both the National Grid agreement and the agreement of sale with the proposed amendments to the additional insureds, revisions to 9.3, 10.7, 10.8, and on the agreement of sale, revisions to Article 7, insurance.
Correct.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Madam President, just so I don't get over my skis, that authorizes me to sign these documents with those revisions, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And I always ask the clerk to notarize the document and say that duly authorized by the town council at such and such a
Should we include
date.
that in the motion?
Actually, I'd suggest that we
Yeah.
include that because of the nature of the contract. I think we should take an additional motion, which is in order at this time.
All right, can we have an additional motion to authorize the town administrator to sign both of these agreements?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. G4, Town Administrator, request approval of appointment for Senior Center Director Janet Holmes, 10 Ernest Street, Smithfield, Rhode Island. Request ratification of 3-year employment contract, January 10, 2017 to January 9, 2020. Town Administrator?
Madam President, as Janet makes her way up, the walking wounded, by quick update, we had about 10 resumes submitted in this job search. The Personnel Board determined that 7 simply really were not qualified, and we had 3 finalists. And we conducted Personnel Board screening interviews, which I attended some time ago, about 2 weeks ago, and subsequently gave a final round interview to Janet and to another candidate. Both candidates were very impressive individuals and corresponded with everyone who's interviewed in a professional manner. Janet stood out from the rest, and I won't take away from it by adding anything other to the list. A tremendous amount of personal energy and commitment to this population, to our senior population, which is evidenced from her resume and just from the way she carries herself. And so I should shut up and let her make that case just by who she is. But I certainly recommend that she achieve her contract this evening.
Hi, Janet. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I don't know if you can hear me in this thing. I've, for the last 11 years, I've worked with East Bay Community Action Program, and there I held 5 different positions over the 11 years. The last of which was I coordinated the senior health insurance program, so I'm your Medicare guru, basically. I teach people about Medicare and help them with their needs. So that's been my biggest role in the last 6 years or so. I coordinated the program along with a number of volunteers, and we worked in 4 areas. My territory, if you will, East Bay Community Action actually carries 10 towns, which I did cover all 10 towns at one point, which Tiverton was one of them. And then when they realigned the state, I lost my Newport County portion, but I maintained Bristol County and East Providence and oversaw Pawtucket and Central Falls as well. They were my subcontractors. So me, along with all my volunteers and other partners, were able to take care of all those clientele. My particular area that I focused on, though, were 4 towns because of the subcontracting. So that would be East Providence, Barrington, Bristol, and Warren. And we serviced about over probably close to 1,500 people per year. During the open enrollment piece is our big bulk between October 15th and December 7th. If you're not familiar with Medicare, we usually see about 800 or so, well, 750 maybe. So that's where I need my volunteer network, et cetera. I also did many other things with EBCAP. I coordinated, throughout the years, I coordinated the LED program, the SNAP program. Also, I used to do the emergency housing assistance program, helped with rental assistance, mortgage assistance. I was the case manager for the transitional housing program, the LED outreach, so a lot of social service needs. So I help people navigating through Medicaid as well as Medicare with prescription assistance, a lot of programs. That put aside, I also do a lot of classes. I teach, over the years, I would teach the Matter Balance series, which is falls prevention, which I feel like I'm a member now. I look at it a little different now that I'm actually experienced, using adaptive equipment and such, which I've never had to until this time, but it does change your focus a little bit. So I was able to reach out throughout all of the agencies and run the class. Actually, I ran it in Tiverton too, the Matter Balance. We did the Healthy Eating series, which is also a program helping seniors eat more with the I don't know if you're familiar with the My Plate. It's instead of the old
Triangle.
pyramid, now they do the plate. So it works on that philosophy. I recently also we're co-facilitating a program on diabetes prevention, which has been really big with the CDC, and the state of Rhode Island had got involved. So I was teaching a class, a group, like more of a coach, trying to encourage them to eat better, be more active. So that was another one. So a lot of different programs that we've been had our foot in. It's been fun. I love it. I definitely enjoy working with seniors. I'm excited about this opportunity. I've been very friendly with many of the senior center directors through the years because that's where I do most of my outreach is at senior centers. So to me, this is kind of a natural progression, if you will. It's very exciting, and I could go on longer, but I don't want to because it's getting late, and I'm sure you all want to go home. So, but do you have questions? 'Cause
Any questions from the council?
I have a question. It looks like in your resume, you're very qualified. It also sounds from when you were just talking that you're going from a position where you've dealt with an awful lot of people, an awful lot of towns, and you're now going to one small.
I know, I'm looking forward to that. I have to tell you, the older you get, the more you want to focus it in. Especially after an open enrollment where I literally was lugging equipment every day to different locations, I am so looking forward to taking the energy and focusing it into one direction. I really am. It's after 10 years of living in my car, you should see my trunk. It's terrible. I don't want to live like that forever. That's why I've actually.
I guess part of what I'm thinking is that you may be overqualified.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
There's a lot for
I'm
me
just
to learn,
saying,
too.
going from having to deal with 4 different towns or multiple directors, multiple this, multiple that, to one much smaller town, so the responsibilities, I would think, would be different.
Well,
I'm throwing it out there
Yeah.
because it's just reacting to what you're saying.
Well, I agree, certain things I feel very comfortable about, but there are a lot of different elements of running a senior center that I am not an expertise, that I really need to learn. And I definitely don't feel overqualified in certain areas. I feel like I've got a lot of learning ahead of me that I hope I will live up to.
Would you care to expand on that?
Well, just the fact of running, running a program is one thing. Running a building, running all the aspects of a building is a little different. I know I can do it. I know it's going to take a little time to get to the comfort level. I'm looking forward to that. I love a good challenge too, to be honest. But I don't feel overqualified for that. I felt good about my job that I had. I felt I kind of reached the pinnacle of where I was there. So there is a progression, but this, I think, is a progression. There's so many other aspects to running. This is a department head. This is a little different than my comfort zone would be, naturally. So that's an interesting question, Christine, because I would never have thought myself as being overqualified. I think I'm qualified.
I'm thinking of the scope of the way you described it. It sounded like, how many people are involved in the scope of the job that you've done? How many volunteers?
Volunteers, well, this has many more volunteers than I had. I had probably a dozen.
Okay.
This has a lot more.
Okay.
When I talked about the 1,000, those are the clients that we serviced.
Okay.
Which we had, in every year they came back, and it'd be more because it's a growing number. Every year people go onto Medicare, and we always encourage them to come back. I mean, to the point where if we didn't increase our volunteers, we couldn't increase the service. There's only one person, you need more. So, but it's an interesting perspective. I don't know if, I would never think of myself as overqualified. I think I am qualified, but overly so, no. I don't think it's a position that I'm gonna be bored with.
Okay.
I'm not worried about that. I'm really hoping I can meet the challenge. That's my thing.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Is the question, well, I'll just put it out there. I'm thinking of the position as well as the salary. So is that two separate things?
No, because you're
You need two different motions, one to approve the appointment and the second to ratify the contract.
Okay.
Madam President, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to approve the appointment for Senior Center Director Jan Holmes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam President, I'd also like to make a motion to ratify the 3-year employment contract, January 10th, 17 to January 9th, 2020. For Janet Holmes, for the terms as stated.
Second.
Okay, just before you vote on it, this is the standard employment contract that the town has for your department heads. I don't know how many years it's been in effect, but I just want to bring to your attention that on paragraph 19, any extension to the contract is to be considered in the last 6 months of the employment contract. If there is no notice within 120 days prior to the end of the contract that it won't be renewed, there's an automatic 4-month extension.
Correct.
So technically, if that date is missed, you've got a 3-year, 4-month contract here, just so you know.
Yep.
just like all the others in the town right now.
That's correct, yes, but I just, when the term was, the 2020 was mentioned, I just want you to know that that's a provision that you're voting on.
Do I need to modify my motion?
So you change it
include
4
that?
months sooner?
If-
To
if
be
you were
reviewed,
going- If you
4
were,
months.
if you were going to change, paragraph 19, I just strike the last sentence, failure to notify the employee shall result in an extension of the contract for a period of 120 days.
Where's the, is the contract in here?
Yeah.
Yes, right here.
There's only one page.
This paragraph is E.
Oh, it's E. Okay, under 16. Yeah,
Yeah, paragraph 19.
okay, got it. Okay.
I believe we added that to the contract as part of the model contract because we needed, what would typically happen is we'd forget the contract was expiring and didn't provide notice, and we wanted to give a 4-month grace period if we did forget to extend or to renew the contract. So if there was no notice given to the employee, we wanted to make sure that we were both covered. We have a responsibility 120 days in advance to notify them of what the situation is with their contract. And if we fail to meet that obligation, then they have a right to have 4 additional months on the contract. So I would prefer that it stay in there. It's for us as well as the employee,
Yeah,
to be sure.
I just want to bring that to the
Yeah.
council's attention, because that has been an issue with one contract in the past. And I just want to let you know what you're all voting on, so.
Yep.
Just have to keep on top of it.
The whole point was, we should be on top of our contracts and be in communication with the employee well in advance of the expiration date of the 3-year contract. So it was like a punishment or a penalty to the town if we didn't meet our obligation to the employee. So that's why it was put in there, and I feel very strongly that it should stay in, and as
So
long
what you're
as we're
saying
aware
is
of it.
September 9th of 2019, we would have to mention that it's time to review?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Formally mention it and say,
I'll put it in my iPhone.
any other discussion, any questions?
Madam, again, we're talking about the contract now.
Yep.
We're not talking about the salary.
We're talking about salary. Salary is part of the contract.
Okay, well then, yeah, so it's open
Yep.
for discussion?
Yes.
Okay. So, I think part of my problem with this is that we are scrounging around on the budget, trying to find $1,000 here, $1,500 here. It's my understanding that this position was just, the salary was raised by, what, $2,000 this past summer? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so within 6 months, we're raising it again to $3,000. And I just think, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I have no doubt that you could do a great job. It's nothing, it's not that. It's that we are under such pressure to save every little bit, and within 6 months, the salary has gone up $5,000. And I think that's too much.
I have to say, and entirely separate of the candidate whose qualifications look amazing, you know, I too was really concerned when I saw this. You know, I understand that the prior council did in fact give the administrator permission to hire in this range. But, you know, we're going through this year's budget looking for $500 and $300 and $700 to close this year's budget shortfall. And, you know, I am concerned that this is, you know, a significant increase for this position. That's not just for this year, but it's, you know, it's an increase every year going forward. And I'd have very much appreciated if the council had had a discussion about, this council had had a discussion about the salary range before these offer letters were created. I am, you know, to quote Christine, I mean, we're kind of looking for quarters in the sofa right now to close the budget gap, and this is a substantial increase. I'm not quite sure where the funding from it comes. I mean, the salary isn't budgeted in this year's budget at this amount.
That's correct.
Just for the record, I also agree with Christine and Trish for all the reasons mentioned, and I'm not going to go on about it, but it is true that we are trying to save every penny, and I don't see the justification of raising this salary.
I want to make it clear, it's not,
too, I was just gonna
it
say.
is not, just as we're saying, it is not about you as a candidate. It's a separate issue. It's the budget, it's the budget problems that we're going through. And again, the change in 6 months, increasing it to $5,000, by $5,000. I think that's another, I just wanted to reiterate it.
Madam President, so I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. We have an issue over a 3-year contract of $9,000, and the other question I have is, what is the cost to not hire the right person for this position? Are we going to sit with a position, a department head vacant like we have with DPW for, what, 2, 3, 4 more years until we find the next Janet Holmes?
Well, we don't know if Ms. Holmes would take it for $3,000 less either. And yes, it's an issue over $3,000, John. I've been going through this budget all weekend and I was thrilled I found $500 so I could try to save trash or try to save some of these programs. Yes, to me, $3,000 is an issue right now in this budget crunch. It definitely is.
It's also an issue for me, which is why I brought it up.
Well, I think we get what we pay for in this town. And I think, I mean, this is not the time to be doing this. It shouldn't have been brought in front of us.
Right.
We've approved the lady's position, and now we're just not going to sit here and argue over a couple of bucks. Because you know what? There's thousands and thousands of dollars in here.
I-
We need
I-
good.
I have things about that, too.
Yep, and it's just, we need good people.
Yes, we do need good people.
And Matt did the work to find the right person, and let's not squabble over $3,000.
So,
That's just
Matt,
my opinion. You guys are entitled to your own. I know where my opinion stands.
So Matt, how are you planning on funding this additional increase? Because I believe, from what we've said, is that Janice Gomes, who received an increase that was budgeted for in the fiscal 16-17 budget, and now you're increasing the salary line item with a new hire. And where would this money come from?
This year, and well, next year it's in there.
I think of utmost concern is this year, because we have trash issues,
Sure.
and certainly next year as well.
The budget submitted to you for next year has not only met your assigned target of 1%, we are, as of this evening, at 0.36% on the municipal side increase with this salary at a higher level. I am sympathetic to the discussion, and I don't want to be seen to be contrary to the view expressed. But as hard as everybody's working on the budget, I work as hard as everyone and came up with a budget that beat your target. I also came up with 48 transfers this year to keep trash going through the end of the year. And I know there's other places where I can go to pick up, at this point in the fiscal year, another $800, $900 to support a salary. And this is what one point I would ask the council to respectfully consider. I was handed a range of salary that was acceptable for this position. I conducted a negotiation. I weighed the qualifications and the salary report from other communities for similar positions and the qualifications of the candidate, and arrived at this salary. The town of Tiverton was paying Mr. Ames $55,000 to be the building official. We're now at $67,000 because we want somebody who can cite the code adequately, defend our positions in court. My predecessor made significantly less. I'm going to say about $10,000 less, at least $10,000 less than you've afforded me. So as far as I'm concerned, when we reach a point where we're looking for an employee to stay with us for a long time and we want to secure that relationship, we make upward adjustments. In this case, a very modest upward adjustment to justify our position as an employer reaching out into the marketplace. I guess that's probably the smartest thing I can say. Please consider that thought as you deliberate on this topic.
I just do want to say one other thing about the budget at 1%. I am not prepared to vote for that budget because there's things in there that I would like to add on and find the savings to add it on. I'm not happy with some of the things we've cut. So that's kind of what I'm thinking in my mind also. I'm trying to keep programs that are cut in this 1% budget. Mm-hmm. And I feel uncomfortable adding more money onto a salary when that's what I'm trying to do. And it has nothing to do with you at all. We are in the worst budget crunch. And I just don't feel it's responsible to do that. And I respect everybody else's opinion, but that's just my opinion.
Just another question, Matt. I was just noticing this. The average hours per week expected is 37.5. I know on some of the other contracts, it's 40 hours per week. I can't remember. Was this always 37.5 for the senior center director?
And this is a legacy contract because this is probably one of the first ones the town wrote because Janice Gomes served in this role for so long. I believe she emerged from the AFSCME union. No, but you had longevity. You had other things that were part of this, and we really. I'm going to be honest with you. It's really 24/7, you're on call for the building, and it's at least a 40-hour responsibility every single week. I would say that's the low end. It's probably closer to 45 in reality, but it's a salaried position. So we can strike that in 37.5 and put 40, but it's not really going to change our relationship with the employee.
To be fair to the candidate here, who's sitting here patiently, we should clarify that this salary discussion is the first time this council is discussing this. So, this is not something that's been bouncing around, that this
we
is the
knew
first
about it.
time.
We never knew about it.
We weren't aware of
Were you aware of what the advertised for the salary was? When they
No.
advertised it?
Out of this council,
Only two.
there's only two present that were here before November. So this is pretty much a brand-new council.
Okay.
I would, and I certainly do not expect the applicant to give us an answer right now, but, my preference would be, for the administrator to meet with the applicant and see if there is a way to work out an arrangement that would keep this salary within what the budgeted amount for fiscal 2016-17 is.
Is that a motion or an amendment to my motion?
That would have to be two. Yeah, that would have to be an amendment to John's motion.
Yep.
No, that would
Robert's
be a
rule.
new motion, right?
Roberts.
Do you want to withdraw your motion at this time, or?
No.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor now.
So we'll have to vote on that.
Yes.
Would you amend it from 37.5 hours to 40 hours? Would you consider?
Yeah, I would take that amendment.
And who's second?
I did.
Would you second that
I would.
amendment?
You should vote on the amendment first, and then the main motion is amended.
Okay, I have a motion and second on amending the contract from 37.5 hours to 40 hours.
Without the salary, that,
That's
Just
amendment.
the amendment.
Yeah.
That's just,
all-
that's, wait a minute, that's just about the hours, that's not
Correct.
about the amount.
That's correct, yes.
Correct.
Okay.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Now we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the contract
As amended.
as amended. Okay.
oh, okay. The amendment would be the 40.
This is on your salary now,
Right.
at 40 hours.
I have motion and a second. All those in favor? 4. Opposed? 3. Motion carries. Welcome to the town.
Oh, my gosh.
Hopefully you enjoyed your first experience.
Thank you.
It gets better.
Town Administrator request approval of appointment of DPW Director William Anderson, 190 Cedar Avenue, East Greenwich, Rhode Island. Request ratification of employment contract for DPW Director, January 10th, 2017 to January 9th, 2020, to William Anderson. Hi, Mr. Anderson.
Hello.
Did you want to do any?
I would. First of all, Bill, your negotiated salary is about $4,000 less than your predecessor. So that's, I guess, how I funded the last one. But you're starting off in this conversation, not everybody knows you, and I would reiterate that the Personnel Board and the Town Administrator, after some lengthy discussion, agreed on an advertising plan, went out to the marketplace in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island to find qualified individuals for this post. 2 strong candidates responded. They were both granted final round interviews. Once again, both qualified. When I looked for matters of difference. I was looking for, it's hard to explain, but a way of dealing with people that suggests a balance between the intellectual pursuit of being a master's, having a master's degree in engineering and working at that level of technical competence, but being approachable enough and agreeable enough to be able to work with guys who work with their hands all day and communicate very directly and forthrightly with one another. And there's a culture there, and Chief Blakey and I have been half a DPW director each for the past few months. And we've gotten to know a lot of the guys a lot better, know the challenges they deal with. And when I was evaluating the candidate, I was looking for somebody who would roll his sleeves up and attack the very significant issues the town faces at the Department of Public Works with the right attitude. Now, I did a lot of background research on Mr. Anderson, and I explained it to him, and he knows that he was an employee of an agency that I was tasked to investigate. And I'm pleased to say his name never came up. Certainly didn't. And the recommendations I received from the industry and from past employers were all extremely strong. And thus, I had a great deal of comfort level in recommending Mr. Anderson for appointment. I know there'll be questions. I would rather just be quiet and let the council ask its questions and let perhaps allow the candidate in his own words, Madam President, for a brief introduction, if that would be okay.
Sure, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, my name's William Anderson. I go by Bill. Been a Rhode Island resident for my entire life. I've grown up here. I went to school here at URI. And I have a wife and 2 sons, both getting ready to graduate from high school and start college. One of the things that I liked about seeing this job is it reminds me of a lot of what I've used to do at my previous employment. The DPW director and the engineering manager position I used to hold at Resource Recovery did a lot of the same things. It wasn't just engineering related, it was more of construction, it was more of design, it was overseeing construction, and it was actually working with operators and engineers and other individuals at the corporation to get projects done. And that was one of the things I liked about that position a lot, is actually you can do not just design work, working in an office all the time, but you get in the field and you actually build something that you design or others have designed and you've oversaw, and you get a product to come out and people can see it and know that it was done correctly. I'm going to continue. I'm a professional engineer. I've been licensed since 1995. I work both in the public and the private sectors. So I worked in the consulting world, and I worked on the side of something, a quasi-state agency, very similar to a municipality. Answer any questions you might have, or
Any questions from the council? Mr. LeBeau?
Are you ready to take a job in a small town? Being as if you're going to have to direct, you're going to have to know street, you're going to have to know the water department, the sewer department, you're going to have to work with a bunch of characters, to say the least.
Yeah, to answer your question, yes. My former position at Resource Recovery as engineering manager, not only did I deal with landfill issues, but the position's kind of, it's a little difficult to explain, so I'll try and give you a quick synopsis. I dealt with more with roadways, I dealt with sewer, I dealt with water, I dealt with storm drainage, I dealt with ponds, I dealt with issues with the town of Johnston. One of the things that Resource Recovery did, which we helped the town of Johnston. So we rebuilt a lot of their roadways, we rebuilt a lot of their water system, we rebuilt a lot of their sewer system, we did a lot of things for the town, because that was just what was asked of the town from us with the host community agreement. So I've done a lot of roadways. If anyone's familiar with the 295 interchange, one of the things that on that project was I actually worked with DOT to get that interchange built, constructed, and designed, built, and constructed. And I also, and my other task, one of the projects I had to deal with was getting a 2-lane rural roadway up to a 4-lane highway to get the trucks from the highway into the landfill, which was averaging about 700 to 1,200 trucks a day.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that area over there because I work over the prison department. But now we got some other things going on in town with the casino coming. So there's going to be a lot of projects, a lot of different aspects. So as long as you're ready.
I've worked on multiple projects all the time. I've done anything from sewage treatment plants, well, leachate plants, to transfer stations, to office additions, to materials recycling facility additions, to parking lots, to, one of my last things with working on the private industry was an addition on a hospital. So working on the site, on all the site development work for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. Mr. Anderson, could you tell us a little bit about your management experience?
Sure. Let's see, from 2001 until 2014, I was the engineering manager. I had 3 engineers and 1 technician, operating technician working for me. One of the engineers we were responsible for basically all engineering aspects at the landfill, and we were also responsible for operation of the leachate treatment facility, pump stations, the sewer collection system, the water system on site, all the utilities on site, and any issues that related to any other departments, such as if the recycling department had issues with the materials recycling facility, operations needed support on the compost facility or the landfill. That was my role was to oversee all of those people. I also have managing experience with when I worked for GZA Geoenvironmental. I actually ran a satellite office for them at the landfill, or actually at the landfill to run the day-to-day operations. At that time, the landfill had no engineering staff. So when I was employed by GZA, I was actually running their engineering staff to support the landfill.
So your experience has been managing professional engineers, a small group of professional engineers?
Yes and no. I should also, I managed the engineers. However, some of my responsibilities were the landfill had an operations group. I wasn't in charge of the operations group unless they were dealing with a construction-related project, and then I was overseeing those guys, the gentlemen on those construction projects to get the work performed.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned you worked for GZA. That's not on your resume?
It is. It should be. GZA and Geoenvironmental. I worked for them from 1995 through 1998.
I don't have it.
Did not get copies.
All I have is you working for Caselli Engineering from December 2015 to November 2016, and then Rhode Island Resource Recovery from 2001 to 2015.
That was the resume. Second page.
Yeah, we're missing the whole second page.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm missing the whole second page.
We all are.
Can we have a copy of this?
Look at it, John.
I don't have it. Joan had it.
You want to make it?
So what was the piece we're missing?
Apparently there was a second page that we never got.
We can rip a copy off right now.
Yes, you want to?
Sorry, Bill.
It's okay.
I think I've sent this out a bunch of times, but it must have gotten eaten.
Maybe it was like front and back and.
Yeah,
the
I
fronts get cut.
I have a hunch that's what happened.
Oh, it might be front and back.
Yeah. And the rest of the document wasn't.
All right. While we're waiting for that, any other questions?
Yeah, I can ask Matt, right?
Yep,
Oh,
yes.
Matt, so did you talk to Mr. Anderson's supervisors? Did you have conversations with them?
Yes.
And could you talk a little bit about that?
A little bit, I guess. So there's a lot of employment history here. It's 8 years worth, 4 different employers. So give people a chance to absorb that while I drone on about this particular aspect of Bill's career. You may recall that in the mid-2000s, there was a lot of attention paid to the central landfill, its economics, its management, and the State Bureau of Audits got involved after the governor's office requested their presence on the matter after a very long investigation that I conducted. And as a result of that investigation, significant changes were made to the board of directors at Resource Recovery, and a brand-new executive director was hired, Mr. O'Connell, who is currently there, replacing, I'm going to forget her last name, Sheila.
Sherry Mulhern.
Sherry Mulhern. And it's a forgettable name for me. Mr. O'Connell is a hard-driven businessman who made his career in the frozen food business. He's an international businessman. He has a very difficult personality. He doesn't give very many people compliments. So I called Mike, because we know one another, and I said, Mike, I don't have a lot of familiarity with Bill's interactions with you after all of the controversy at the landfill. And I'll do the best I can to use only Mr. O'Connell's words and not my own. Mike's review of Bill was, I could not have done it without him. He was the only honest guy here when I arrived. I relied upon his advice and insight for the better part of my first year. Coming from a gentleman who can be a difficult person, I thought that was a very high compliment. And that really does cover 15 years of Bill's career, the last 15 years.
So is,
But I'm going to just keep finishing. I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam President, but the other thing was that Bill was assigned to interact with those engineering firms that do a lot of work at the landfill. You oversaw
Is that what
their
these are?
operations.
Actually, when I was the engineering manager at the landfill, I had 6 consultants that I had to oversee and make sure that each one of them was doing what they were supposed to do, and that as most time we have consultants, they don't like to interact well with each other, so I had to be involved constantly in making sure that one consultant was talking to the other consultant and doing the job that they needed to. If there was overlap, making sure that each consultant had the overlap that they needed to get their specific project they were tasked with done.
Yeah.
so
I
you were
spoke
supervising the consultants, is that right?
Consultants and staff, and engineering staff.
So I spoke to two partners in one of those engineering firms with
Okay.
which the town has a relationship. And I was looking for specific feedback, what it was like to work there at the time. I thought the feedback was interesting. They liked you very much, but what they said was, boy, he can be tough on us as vendors, which I, again, took as...
They're talking about you,
Yeah.
not the bid, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the point was they were being held to a high standard when they
Right.
did work for the landfill and interacted with Bill.
Okay.
So I, again, found that to be a complimentary reference.
I guess what I was looking for, when I looked through your paperwork, I was looking for references from your supervisors. And I didn't see them. I saw references from a coworker, references from a consultant, references from a partner, but I didn't see references from supervisors.
And not to steal Bill's thunder, but I think Randy said we have some characters in town. I don't think those characters hold a candle to the characters that work at Resource Recovery. I think you take your career into your own hands if you ask certain people in the authority chain there to provide you with references, not knowing what they might say. I don't care about that. I call the people that I think I needed to call.
Yeah,
But the
I think
candidate
it's a
wasn't
fair
better.
question, though.
Yeah.
Because I think that, you know, it's like, it's fine to get references from a coworker, but it's really somebody who supervised you. And you worked there for 15 years, so it was like, was there just one supervisor?
No, I had 3
Okay.
supervisors while I
So
was.
it was more out of curiosity, how come we didn't see any references to people who were supervising, and it sounded like there were some issues from some of the paperwork that I've seen.
I'm going to say 2 of the supervisors are no longer, I think, even in the state, if not still alive. a third supervisor, my last supervisor there. He and I were not seeing eye to eye.
Okay.
He started to question my integrity.
Okay.
He started to, he had aspirations of being the next executive director.
Mhm.
So he decided he was going to change his style, he was going to change his appearance and decide he was going to he had to change his appearance so he could become the next executive director in his eyes. So he decided to reorganize the department and liquidate my position and run everything himself. So that's why I'm no longer with Resource Recovery.
Okay.
As far as Joe Casale and Casale Engineering, in January when I took the job, I had strong feelings that it may not work out. I've had my own consulting company. I've run my own business before, and being Casale being a very small engineering firm, I didn't know if it was going to work out for what happened. But I was offered 2 jobs. I had a job out of state, offered a position out of state to move, to stay in the solid waste industry. However, it would have taken me and would have separated me from my family, and I was not willing to do that. So I talked it over with my wife. The pay wasn't enough for me to move out of state and run and have 2 households, one in Rhode Island and one here. My sons were juniors at the time. They were looking, my wife wanted to keep them in high school, didn't want to disrupt their life, and I agreed with her. So if I was going to take that job, which was it looked something I was interested in, it would have probably been very interesting on my family. So Joe Casale and I talked. He offered me a position. Things slowed down in December, and frankly, it wasn't. I was at the top of the totem pole. He was having money issues, or it was slowing down. So we had to, we parted ways on good terms. I'm still very friendly with him. I don't think he's going to say anything negative about me.
It does mention in your application, though, there may have been some differences of opinion between you and Mr. Casale?
Differences of opinion? No. It's like Joe ran his own company, and Joe would run his own company. We left on good terms. We mutually agreed it was time for me to move on.
May I ask one other question? Forgive me for this one. The Rhode Island Solid Waste Management Corporation is different than the Resource Recovery Corporation?
Rhode Island Solid Waste used to be, that's what it started out as when it was originally established by the state. When I went from consulting, they hired me as an entry-level project engineer. They changed their name in 1999 to Rhode Island Resource Recovery to try and get the dynamic of it's not just solid waste we do, but we have materials recycling, we compost, we do this, we do that.
Yeah.
So they wanted to change their name. So, and at that time, it changed completely over, brand new board, brand new administration, brand new everything.
So, forgive us, because we never saw the second page of your resume. So, according to this, you actually worked for Rhode Island Resource Recovery for 2.5 years from October of 95 to July of 98, left, and then went back.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I can explain so you
No,
understand if you need.
I was assuming they're the same entity and they changed their name. I just wanted to understand that.
It is, but in 1998, I'll just provide anyway. 1998, my boss at the time made some enemies with the Board of Commissioners that run the resource recovery, and therefore the edict came down that they liquidated the entire engineering staff. Therefore, I went to work for private consulting at that point.
Which is confusing, because it says Anderson Engineering,
Yeah.
and it says 1996 through December of 2015, but those are the same dates as you're working for Resource Recovery.
I had a small business, consulting business, that I was trying to keep my design skills going. Again, at Resource Recovery, I did more management, some design, and pretty much more construction oversight, dealing with contractors, dealing with consultants. I wanted to keep my design skills going, so I had a small little side business that I did a lot of residential stuff for, including septic designs, retaining walls, small site designs, small permitting. I did that pretty much on weekends and after hours if I did have time, which I didn't have a lot of.
You have a Class 3 license, right?
I do have a Class 3 designer's license with DEM, yes.
So that begs the question, why don't you just do Anderson Engineering full-time?
So, let's see, in 2010, when everything went crazy at Resource Recovery and the investigation was ongoing, I was asked by the executive director to no longer run anything outside of the corporation, or no longer have any side business or do any kind of work outside of the corporation. I agreed, and I had to turn away all my clients. One of the problems is once you in consulting, when you get rid of your clients, it's very tough to get them back. And if I could easily have gotten them back, I would. I tried to make a go of it from the time I left Resource to the time I took the job in January. I had a couple come back, but a lot of them basically went elsewhere, found other engineers, and moved on. So again, I was asked to get rid of my clients. I did, and it wasn't something I could easily get back and make a positive note on.
Okay. So that begs the question, you're working for the town of Tiverton, will you also be trying to run your engineering business?
I don't think so, given that I'm going to be on 24/7. I may take, occasionally I get a phone call from a relative or something who needs a septic design or something like that, and I would probably do something like that. But again, I don't foresee having time being on call 24/7.
Under the provisions of the contract, no director may take outside employment without the prior authorization of the town administrator.
Oh, that's right, we put that in there.
You did,
So that answers no.
probably. Although I do want, I think a Class 3 license is a worthy credential, and if it's necessary to practice from time to time to stay in practice, I would be okay with that.
Okay, any other questions from the council? John? Denise? No? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Are you waiting for a motion? I would do it, but just help me along with it. I'm good at seconding them.
Well, why don't, before we accept the appointment, should we talk about the salary?
I think, as the administrator stipulated, this was negotiated lower than the prior director's salary.
For the base salary, but because
Yeah.
the health insurance, if you look at the impact statement, the health insurance, the former director opted out, so in effect is a net increase in the contract of $11,494.
It's an increase of 11, yeah.
Which I don't know where we, and would intend to get the budget for that amount.
Once again, it's in the budget that was submitted and the target was hit. I'm very, you gotta help me out here, Tony. I don't think a conversation about a potential employee's healthcare election, I'm not so sure. It's getting close. Not being an appropriate conversation. You can't say A or nay based on what you project somebody may elect for health insurance.
On that basis, maybe what we ought to do is just move this one over to the next meeting, if that's okay with the.
But it was presented in public session, though.
I understand.
Once it's presented here, what he's gonna opt for. So that's why it's being discussed.
Well, let me just,
I will give it to you most of the time. We have no idea what they're gonna do.
Right.
But it is presented.
well, because I think fiscal impact, to be thorough and responsible, has to disclose the best available information. I think I made an assumption to come up with that number. But the other thing I would say is, when we forecast the entire health insurance budget for the staff, it's at best a significant amount of uncertainty. Individuals will opt in, they will opt out. Some people go from single to family. We just had a firefighter go from family to single. We budget to a number and we do our best to hit that number based on the best information we have as of that day. So whether or not there's any one hire significantly changes the actual bottom line of that account requires a lot more information than the fiscal impact statement for this one contract. That's why we don't, that's why the conversation about whether it's a
Well, we're looking at
meritorious
the-
conversation
So what
is,
you're saying is, we're looking at the worst-case scenario.
that's right.
Which may or may not happen, but since it's here.
Or maybe offset from changes made by others.
So, but the range, but either way, the range here is, the best case scenario is 4,600,
That's right,
an increase, and the
No,
worst case.
Decrease.
yeah.
Increase.
No, it's a decrease.
No, if you look, the range, the fiscal impact range. So the best case scenario on the fiscal impact is an additional $4,600 a year, and the worst case.
No,
No, it's
the
a
parentheses
decrease.
mean it's a negative.
It's a negative.
Oh, I see.
Because
Oh, okay.
normally, that's what would be there.
Right.
Normally, you would just have base. This is the first time I've ever seen you do this with an employee.
Oh, no. David Robert, we just did David Robert and everything was there.
As someone we hired, though, as someone
A
who's
brand
just
new
coming
hire.
in?
No,
No, you've never done it as a brand new hire. Like
Right.
David, we know what he asked
Right.
for. This is the first time I've ever seen you do it for a brand new hire.
Well, I mean,
Because that's always up in the air. His wife may get a job and decide to take better health insurance before.
or we may,
It's like,
if we're aggressive about this, we may actually decrease the overall cost of this line by a percentage large enough to pay for a lot of things. I keep coming back to that because I think that's the relevant point. We have over 100 employees. They opt in, they opt out. Things changes over the course of a year.
So we're going to have to pay somebody health insurance. They're not
It
going
must
to
be
sit there
offered.
with big
It's the
degrees
law.
and sit there and not get health insurance.
to be fair, I've just never seen it be here as a choice on whether or not to hire someone. That's usually not even discussed. We offer that.
But the point of the fiscal impact
I
statement,
get why
yeah,
you did it, but normally we wouldn't look at that at all.
that's right.
this is because our prior DPW director
Opted out.
opted out. So therefore, the way that this has been budgeted in the past has based on an employee that opted out of the system. So, so I do appreciate the fact that Matt is bringing this to us because potentially it's a substantial increase. Where for the average employee, most employees who have opted in at least at some level, the potential increase or decrease is not that significant. This is a potentially significant increase.
But every employee is entitled to
Yes.
Right.
health care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we're arguing that, though.
To me, the salary is what I look at. Because we didn't really know what she was gonna, at least we did.
Right, but if the prior director were, I think he left us at just about 89. And so if he had been in line for a 2%, he would have been over 90 at this point.
Which would have upped the FICA and the. and
FICA,
the
Social Security, all the
contributions
rest of it, yeah.
a little bit. So,
It's very hard, that the prior employee was a retiree from another state, and so it's very hard to compare the two relationships because he really did come to the table with a lot of cost savings based upon his past track history. Now we're hiring a pure Rhode Island younger person who's going to have to earn his way. I mean, Resource Recovery doesn't have a pension plan set up. This will be your first, when you start contributing to the MERS, this will be the first time you do so.
For a pension, yes. They
Yeah.
had a private 401K, right? There's a quasi-entity they did not
That you
have.
took with you.
They did not have a state pension.
Right.
system.
401A system.
I mean, Randy, do you want to make a motion? Is that what you're doing?
I would like to. but, I can't. I'm going to second.
No, we're gonna have you make the motion.
No, I really can't.
All you have to do is look at the,
Just say make a motion and then read
No.
5.
look
No.
at the agenda item. and
Negative.
He's not gonna do it.
I can't. I just
Well,
can't. I'm
then-
just not.
Then in
No,
that
not
case,
me.
Madam President,
You can second it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the appointment for DPW Director William Anderson, 190 Cedar Avenue, East Greenwich, Rhode Island.
do I have a second?
You do.
No,
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? 2. Motion carries. Do we have another motion?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to ratify the employment contract for DPW Director January 10, 2017 to January 9, 2020 for William Anderson, knowing well and full that there is an extension clause in that contract.
Very good. Do I have a second?
You do.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Discussion.
Discussion?
I have to say, one of the things that concerns me about department head contracts is starting off with a 3-year contract. I've never thought that that was a particularly good way to go, especially in the departments where you're supervising a lot of people. No offense against Mr. Anderson, I think that the town should strongly consider amending department head contracts to start with a 1 year and and an extension, but not necessarily to start off with a 3-year contract for a new employee in a position of such responsibility as the DPW director.
It takes a year to learn your job properly.
I think you're going to have a problem getting people to apply if they know 1 year.
I mean,
and they're out.
As a correction officer, we're 16, 18 months before they cut you loose on your own. And then it's a lot to ask for have somebody come into a position for 1 year. I understand where you're coming from. I really do.
Well,
It's just,
where I'm coming from, honestly, is the private sector where, that's pretty much, I mean, there are often not in private jobs contracts to start with. Most everybody in the private sector, serves at will. If a job isn't working out, if you're not performing, there are options. If it's not just a good fit, sometimes it's not a good fit. I personally believe that, a year it may take a person a year to know their job, but I think that both the employer and the employee, by the end of a year, should know whether or not this is a fit, whether or not this is a candidate who's progressing and going to be successful, even if they haven't mastered everything. But I've seen instances, not just here, but in other places, where you have a contractual employee that's obligated for 3 years. It's not a good fit, and it becomes a very difficult situation to address.
how are you going to get somebody to apply for
That-
1
that's
year?
the thing I
No,
think.
but you don't necessarily, because I think it's also common to say you can have, probation.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah.
like, you can have probation for 6 months, you can have it for the year, and it's just like, and I think it's true that they might not know the entire job, but you get a flavor for people. You get a sense if people are gonna get along, you get a sense of people, what it feels like. Does this seem good? Does that seem good? And I think it's, 3 years, I think, can be daunting.
It's a task. I mean, people.
It's a crapshoot.
Yeah, but that's what the administrator's job. He searches out, he looks for these people, he knows, he does the background checks on them. And you know what? We have to he's the department head. You have to trust what his opinion is on the person.
If you want
We
to
had people
attract-
elect us for 2 years. They don't know nothing about us.
I don't agree with that.
If you want to attract good quality
But
people,
we're
you usually
getting-
got to. Don't say that about your program. You usually got to put out like a 3-year, with a 1-year probation period. You could do that.
Well, no, but I
Review it
just said
after 1
that.
year.
Yeah.
But it's a 3-year, but after 1 year, we can review their contract and say, we terminate. You can do a
But
3-year.
this is a 3-year contract. It really doesn't give a probationary period.
Right, this
and
does.
it's-
Well, that's
I'm
what
I'm saying
she's
for the
bringing
future.
up, yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Because
what we're
if you
speaking
want to
of, the
attract
future
good
right now.
people, you got to offer them something.
But doesn't a lot of contracts have a probationary period of
Yes.
6
Well,
months?
well, mine did, right? And,
I was thinking.
and we had one for Neil. I guess, and listen, it's not that I don't think about these things as we go through it and present it. I think with both of these candidates tonight, we have people who really have served in their careers for a very long time. They have a track history of commitment to their workplaces. And I am not optimistic about going to the marketplace and hiring an engineer for this salary without some commitment to the candidate. Let's be honest, an engineer in the private sector can command a great deal more than $85,000, but the trade-off is job security. So there are things that we do in our careers and the adjustments we make that are part of this dialogue, part of this conversation. I'm not opposed to a 6-month probationary, because like I said, that's how the town treated me, and it was fine. But in this particular case, I didn't see fit to put it in the contract, but I'm not opposed to you amending to put it in. I just don't know that, we solve all of these problems of public employment in the context of this discussion about to hire this guy. Let me give you an example. I had a conversation this morning about trash pickup with my colleague in Portsmouth.
Wait a minute.
They went,
Are we
hold,
getting off-
no,
are
no,
we getting off
no,
topic?
I'm not. Absolutely not. Just because I mentioned another town, it's actually very important to think about what other towns are going through. I'm not worried about trash. We'll get to trash. The town is a AAA rated town. They went out to find a finance director at 140, 150 grand a year. It's a great job. You know how many applications they got? 2. It's getting increasingly difficult to get people to do these jobs, put in these hours. I don't want to lose. I want to get really good candidates in here. I want to offer them a contract that respects their professional standing. And that was the judgment I made in this case.
The chief?
Very quickly, I understand what you're saying, but I would caution you that I wouldn't have come here if I was going to have a 1-year shot and leave something that I was at for 28 years. I took 3 years and I thought I could prove myself. Also, please take in consideration, we're dealing with some strong labor unions, and if they see that that's going to have, that could be a problem, they could definitely put some pressure on someone to make them look bad for a 1-year time, for a short period of time like that. So just keep that in and the private sector pays a lot more than the public.
Chief, since you and I deal with this all the time, you and I, I'm looking at the fire chief as well. If you had 1 year hanging over your head, what is your stance towards discipline with a leading member of the union? Do you fight the battle or you just let it go?
Oh, I like to aggravate people, so I fight. But
Right, but let's be honest, some of these folks are residents in
I
town,
don't
they
do
can
that.
reach out.
I'm jesting. I
Excuse me, there's a
But I
motion on the
won't,
floor.
I just want to let that.
There's a second.
I think we're getting a little, off track here. To Joe's point, whether it's 1 year or a probationary period, if a probationary period is the better way to go, that's fine. I personally feel that, a 3-year contract for a brand-new employee who we hope will work out, but even Matt can admit that he's hired people that have not worked out, that, at that point, we're responsible for the taxpayers' dollars here. And if you have an employee who is not a good fit and it is not working out and there is nothing you can do for 3 years, you're not really serving the taxpayers' interest. So,
Madam President,
Yes.
I just want to ask Councilor Hilton, is that an offer to amend my motion or the contract in any way?
if you would consider that to a probationary period, to include a probationary period, which we have included in other contracts.
If it will appease the counselor, then I will consider.
Thank you.
So we have a separate amendment to,
You need a motion to amend to add a probationary period to the contract that is before you. There should be a motion for that.
We need to say the amount of time.
Contract with the 6-month probation.
Correct, yes.
Right, so the probationary period will run from January 10th, 2017 to June 10th,
That's what we
2017.
did for you.
Yes, that is.
Okay, 6 months.
And there was a review required at the end.
We're not even on the contract, we're on the appointment.
No, we did the appointment.
We did the
we
appointment.
voted that.
Flip the page,
All right, wait a minute. All right, let's go. So, Do I have an amendment to include a probationary period of 6 months running from January 10th through June 10th, 2017?
I'll make the amendment.
Do I have a second on that amendment?
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. Do I,
Have any questions?
any discussion from the council?
I
No,
just
seeing no
wanted-
discussion, all those in favor?
I guess I'm not allowed to say anything.
4. Opposed, who is? 2 opposed.
I'm not voting.
1 abstention. The amendment passed. Now we have the original motion on the table of,
As amended to
As
include
amended.
the 6-month probationary period, very similar to what the town administrator experienced in his first year.
all right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? 4 opposed, 2 abstention.
I'm not voting.
1 abstention.
Probably not allowed to say
Motion passes.
Actually, just so I'm trying to be helpful here, Randy, are you abstaining or are you recusing? Just so you know
Abstaining.
what.
He's abstaining.
He's abstaining. All right.
He has no reason to refuse.
Well,
I have no idea what you guys just did, so I'm just not voting. You guys know what you did.
Okay. Next item.
Welcome aboard, Mr.
Welcome
Anderson.
aboard.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. Item 6. Council Shabbat, discussion and approval of preliminary budget for fiscal years 2017, 2018 to forward to the Budget Committee. All right.
Madam President, if I may, hand out something? Or do you want to just talk first?
Just hand out your amended.
So, at the end of the week and over the weekend, the president had established a checklist of things that needed to be looked into, and that included amendments to the document.
Yep.
We discussed this, the president and I. I felt like I really just wanted to reorganize the spreadsheet so that it reflects exactly Denise Surratt's treasurer's reports, so all the accounts will be in the exact same order. So, because I was using an older administrator's format, it's very hard to follow, so I reorganized it completely. Now, you'll notice that what that means is that some accounts, like the Budget Committee and the Personnel Board, that used to be in financial administration or in general government, are now all together under boards and commissions. So some of your subcategory totals will be slightly different than they were at this point. The other thing, I'll just get it around. The document has shaded cells. Wherever there's a shaded cell, it's a request that was made by a member of the council. So, for instance, the council president asked for an OPEB line, so we assigned an account number to an OPEB line. There's nothing in it yet, but it's there. Same thing with zoning review and rewrite. The treasurer and I discussed that, and it was added to the legal services account. Again, there's nothing in it yet, but I assume that there's going to be discussion about what should go in it. Wasn't going to assign that number. I was going to let the council discuss it. The streetlights changes, we need to reflect what was discussed here tonight. So when you look at the capital page, which I believe is going to be page 2, actually it's page 3, so it's recurring debt. There's a line in yellow. It should say, I believe, 58,000. It should say 54,000. In yellow or gray? On the far
I
right
got the
here.
OG copy.
Oh, any case, the streetlights outlay and the capital
So it would be, the streetlights on page 3.
on page 3.
It went from 150 to 58.
From 150, it should now be 54,
I think it's 55.
or 55. So we gave ourselves a little bit of room.
Oh, streetlights, okay.
Matt, just to let you know, it didn't
It's
come
not,
out,
it
the
didn't come out the
highlighted
shade.
amount for the
I'm
shade.
sorry, my
That's okay.
apologies.
I
That's
get
okay.
the yellow copy. I don't know how.
You got
I
the
just wound up
original.
with it.
You got the
won the
original.
jackpot.
No,
He doesn't know how.
to be,
All right, so that should be 55,000.
right.
The 58 is 55?
Is 55.
Okay, so now.
And then,
I'm gonna have to follow with this.
I'm going to need this,
Do you want me to show you which ones are highlighted?
He needs that.
You want this one?
Is it yellow?
Yeah, this is, I get the highlighted
You got
ones.
the original
Here,
one.
switch with me.
Oh, they're gone.
I have no budget.
Yeah, take that.
Let's go. There's copies there.
Went like hotcakes.
All right, so on page, on page 4, yeah. So I'm leaving streetlights because I'm done with that. Did everybody make that adjustment?
Yes.
You're just showing us your adjustment.
All the changes, right?
All right, go ahead.
So on page 4, there was a request, I'm not entirely sure I understood the notation, but I understood the notation to say, add a full-time clerk and a part-time inspector after the last conversation. That's what my checklist had,
To add it?
to add it. Or to make a notation. Are you remembering this, Madam President?
Right, this was
Number
just to, number 5, identify the clerk as full-time, and it just says salary clerk new, and we wanted it to say full-time. And
You
then
just wanted the notation to say full-time, you didn't want the money in the account.
I didn't.
Correct.
All right.
Is this salary for a full-time clerk or a part-time clerk?
That's a full-time clerk as a new employee. So the AFSCME contract has steps in it, Madam President, so that we start off $3 lower an hour when you come in as a new clerk. But if you didn't want the budget, then just cross it out, those are still zeros.
Well, it says 33,000.
Right, when you say identify, I just thought you wanted the money there.
Oh, I got it on.
Yeah.
So we're gonna strike the clerk and the assistant building inspector.
What I'm hearing is that the council didn't intend me to put numbers in, just to identify one as full-time and one as part-time.
Correct.
All right,
But that's what it would cost us.
it's a misunderstanding. That is what it would cost you.
Right, it was just because it said full-time building inspector at 58,000, and that 58 was for a part-time building inspector.
Right. So my bottom lines aren't going to work out as we capture my misunderstanding.
Okay, so
Struck those two,
those two come back out.
right. On page 5, the supplies and miscellaneous, I sent an email out updating the council on the 5-year history of the supplies account, and I came to the conclusion that the postage account is fine, but the supplies account is over budgeted at $3,600. So I've set it down to 2,000.
You don't think we could make that 1,500?
She's at 1,200 now in her actuals.
Oh,
Yeah, I transferred about $900 out
yeah,
already,
You transferred money out of there.
but she's also spent about 1,200. Okay.
Okay.
Then we had a conversation, the council instructed me to look into what are the arrangements around having that expertise at this building site in the event the casino is at the point where they can be building. Who's going to provide us with the expertise? And we've had several conversations now with the administrator and staff in the town of Lincoln. They did exactly what the council discussed. They took the permit fee into escrow and spent down the escrow in order to comply with the law. And that was Joe's recollection. And the solicitor's their solicitor, so
That's correct, yes.
you weren't there the other night when we were discussing it. So I brought this back down to 5,000. What is that 5,000? I still think that Neil needs some money to work with Steer. There are going to be times when he needs them to back up. And they're not cheap. So he is the soil erosion officer for the town. His designee is Steer Engineering. He needs to have some funds. So right now, when he charges, I have to transfer it from another account to pay off their bills when he needs their help.
Well, now that we have a new DPW director, who is an engineer, in many cases in the past, it was actually our prior DPW director who did those soil erosion and control inspections.
So you might be able to strike it completely.
I'd say we strike the 5,000.
Okay. I didn't make any further changes until page 8.
So I'm striking that 5,000, that's.
Yes, you are.
I'm getting it right now.
On page 8, there's a line, the municipal employees retirement system for our municipal employees and our department heads. Now, there should be a decrease because our employer contribution rate has been cut in half because this is overfunded. This is at 123%. So the employer contribution rate here is 1.32%. But I had miscalculated that, and I told you I made that mistake, so I added the money back. The CREF, I still have to catch up on the CREF portion of that. That's going to be another that should be right around $10,000. But let me get a number before you. On page 9 is the president's account for OPEB. Just for the record, I don't know that everybody knows, because it's such a detailed thing. There are 2 labor unions in town that contribute to OPEB, and it's not very much. It's 0.5% of base. So one option for the council, if it wanted to begin to fund OPEB, would be to do a 1-for-1 match with the employees, the policemen and firemen who contribute to OPEB under their contract. I made no further changes. I had one follow-up for Councilor
Matt.
Hilton. Yeah,
A
hold on.
1-to-1 match, to what percentage?
0.5%.
And that's what we'll match.
Right, so we're talking a pittance.
Penny,
Right.
okay.
But it's something, and in the OPEB world, they tell you as long as you're doing something, it means you're not doing nothing. It's sad to say, but that's really the thought process. So I didn't change anything else after that. I had one update for Councilor Hilton. She asked about the IT budget, why it had gone up to $8,400. The answer is a little bit more detailed than I gave off the cuff on, what was that, Wednesday night. We are using our consultant a little bit more because we're getting a little bit more sophisticated around here with the Chromebooks and some of the other things that we're trying to do. But we also have a per month, per user fee to participate in Google Mail and all the Google suite of services that we've migrated over to. It's not a lot of money, but it is an increase over what we were doing in the past. As I've mentioned Wednesday, I'll reiterate, it was very disconcerting the number of times our email server was being crashed, and it was not only affecting our work productivity, but really started to feel like it was affecting our security, and we do have some significant information that we store here. So moving to Google on the cloud was a cost-effective, higher security solution for the town than what we were doing. So that's going to change the bottom line, and I probably, since I don't spend money on things like laptops, I can't update it on the fly for you, but I believe you just took several thousands of dollars out of this budget.
Well, I hope, Madam President, is it all right if I go over what I was looking at?
Because I may have some things for you.
Yeah, and I think I discussed some of it with you. At the town council, the future needs account, I think we could take $25,000 out of there. We don't have any contracts. We have zeroed that out as of last month.
I think that's your contingency, correct? You said future needs.
Contingency,
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. Page 3. So right now, that's at 0 anyway, because we took from there to save trash for last month. I'm gonna leave 25 in there because Matt did mention that we may need that for other things. But I think we can cut down 25 there.
I just have one question about that.
We don't really, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, assuming that we cut 25 out now, I mean, what's the chance that we ever see 50,000 back in that account ever again?
No, I'm gonna tell, well, during contracts, we are justified because that's what we use that account for. Now, we have no contracts up this year. next year, if we do have a contract, I think we're very justified to say that we're putting the raises in there.
But it's also for emergencies that occur, like if the water pipe broke at the East Crandall Road Fire Station. We had to pull the money, and that was like $10,000 or $12,000. We had to pull out of this account.
That's
So-
why
And-
I'm asking
and along-
for 25, because I think that we need that as an emergency account. This
well-
is just my suggestion.
Out of curiosity, again, I'll ask the administrator for this, but, because we did talk a little bit about this over the weekend, but I believe that we budget for about, what, 5 storms?
In
our
DPW,
In
we do.
DPW for snow. If we have 6, I'm assuming this is where we would look for the money?
Correct.
You could.
You could.
If you didn't have the money, see, the thing about this budget is you won't have much left in the DPW accounts because it's been stripped so bare. So what would your backdrop be? But it's not really DPW that concerns me as much as, and everybody knows this is true, we can be swimming along hunky-dory July and August, have a falling out with an employee who has the right to arbitrate with us, and all of a sudden we find ourselves at step 2, step 3 grievances, and we're arbitrating within the fiscal year, and it's $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, depending on how complicated the case is, how long it takes.
It's at 0 right now.
Yeah.
And we're
Which
5 months
concerns
into
me.
it. It's at 0. So I just thought 25, and I was looking at the history of this account.
Yeah.
I think 25, I'm just putting it out there, because what I'm planning on doing
25 is-
is not decrease this budget. But what I want to do is add some things that I feel is very important we cut. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I think there, we could get some money here and maybe put back the recreation program. So that's what I'm trying to do. And the other thing, this is just what I suggest, but, and I certainly will respect anyone that doesn't agree, that's okay, of course. The fire department, we had a long discussion about overtime, and I explained to everybody how the platoons work now. And in reality, I was thinking this weekend, we could have 6 men down and still not have overtime if we have 7, 7, and 7. The only thing that does concern me, and we have discussed this in the past, where I hope if there's 2 vacancies on, say, platoon 1, and platoon 3 has a full 9, I'm hoping that they bring a man over to platoon 1, so that there's no overtime. And I'm hoping that's what's being done. Because there's 3 down now, so I'm hoping that there's no platoon where there's 2 down. Because if there is, then there's more chance of overtime. All over on the other side, they're sitting there with 9 men. And that's where
Would
overtime
that
could
be in
go
the
up.
jurisdiction of the chief to make a temporary transfer?
Of course, yes. The contract, and we discussed that during contract time. There's nothing in the contract that says we can't do that. So that would be a way to stop it. I think, right at this point, we've only spent $50,000 there. And we're halfway through the year. Less than that, probably. So I want to bring that down to $125,000. And Matt, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think we could take 50 out of there. It's very difficult to occur overtime with this contract. It's not impossible, absolutely not. But we went through a whole summer only spending $40,000.
Doesn't it cost us an extra $10,000 every 28 days?
But-
The shifts they're on now?
Yeah, but that's already in, that's already worked into the cost of the contract, am I correct?
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't come out of there.
Right.
And it doesn't come out of there, right? It's-
No, it comes out of there because it's overtime.
Right, but it's
That's what I'm
already,
saying,
Right, but
Right.
it's,
because it's overtime.
but it's not.
yeah, it's,
It's hard to explain.
but it has to actually occur to be paid. So that 10, I don't think that 10 is your run rate at 56 for those guys. I think it's less than that. Because we didn't build in 120. That wasn't the idea. The idea was, I think when we did the math, the vice president will correct me, but I think when we did the math, what is truly built in, it was somewhere between 44 and 46K.
I was gonna say 50.
And it was
Over a
only
year, Joe.
after that, when you hit the vacations and you had some callbacks, and then you do the look back, you still have to inquire as to whether the hours are truly hours worked. So there's a lot that goes into this, but I was comfortable because the contractual cap this year, so you would go up to 175, and then you would do a strict FLSA that point forward, not just the time worked, but it had time on the books. It had to be time actually worked, so no sick, no vacation during that 28-day look back.
That's after 175.
That's after 175. So I'm very comfortable with the number being at 175 because that has been an absolute stopgap. That has been pretty much a brick wall. It's very difficult to get past that strict FLSA. Based on this year's run rate, I mean, it all depends on how. I hate to be. I don't want to sound informal, but in a way, it's a gamble. In a way, it's a forecast as to what you think the fire department's experience going forward with staffing is going to be. Personally, I think that knowing what the number is in the budget motivates all of us, the administrator, the chief, to make sure that staffing is at the proper level. And you go out and get laterals, and you work it, and you make sure that you don't have empty holes. And that becomes the imperative of the department, is to keep it staffed. You know, and if there isn't money there, and you're starting to run over the budget, then it's accountability time in front of the town council.
Joe, November 30th, it was only $46,000 we spent from that account. We're already talking almost 6 months into this, and over the July, August, and September summer vacation hours. Because with this 9 platoon, theoretically, 2 people could take vacation, and there's no overtime there. In the past, someone take vacation, and it occurred overtime. I'm just looking at the history. That is my only logical way to look at this. We have spent $47,000 in 5 months. We have 152 in there. If we spend that 152 by July, we've got a huge problem. So that's why I think the 125 is very doable. Just my opinion.
It just concerns me that, you know, the 3 departments that everybody in town uses at some time in their life, fire, police, and public works, we cut. And then we run into a problem later on where we gotta take money to offset overtime or snowstorms. We don't know how many snowstorms
But
we're
we're not
gonna
cutting
have.
men or anything. All we're cutting is overtime.
I
all
understand
we're
that, but that
doing.
may be a problem, gonna be down 4 men.
You have to be down 6 men to actually have this become a huge problem. But we're down 3 men right now, right?
Right.
3 men officially we're down. And we've only, and we're at 46,000. I don't know, just.
If I recall correctly from our last budget meeting, I believe the chief intimated that there were several other
Right,
firefighters
potential.
that could potentially leave, so.
Right, so
I
we
mean,
might be
while we're
down
only at
6.
47,000 spent now, I mean, we could run through that in theory, should all those firefighters choose to leave in the next month or 2.
Right, we could be down 6.
Like, when we're talking next July, I hope we're hiring people. Because if we're not hiring people. we're
But
gonna
that
get
comes
a
back to what we were saying before about wages. We're the lowest in the state, so people are coming here, getting trained, and then they're going somewhere else.
I mean, it's just an idea, guys, that's all.
All right, why don't we get back to actually the action item list so that we can just,
Yeah.
so we can go through, starting from the top. Item number 1 was police, fire, building, provide list of vehicles and mileage. That was provided. Any feedback? That was Counselor DiMederos that wanted that.
I just wanted to see it.
Karen has
Very
something to
good.
say.
Item number 2, on the street light purchase and conversion, we've made the adjustments to the budget. Item number 3, League of Cities and Towns membership. The town administrator was going to quantify the return on investment. I don't believe we've seen anything on that.
I've got it with me. I'm just trying to be helpful here with the math.
I think what is more important is the next item, number 4,
Well,
Newport
just-
Chamber of Commerce membership. We were going to have an additional discussion on that, whether to put that back in.
Yeah. So going back to the a pile of paper in front of me. Going back to the REAP, which is the energy purchasing cooperative that the town has as a part of the League of Cities and Towns. Bear with me when I find the handout. We have 3 years. I asked Direct Energy to go back for 3 years and to compare the standard offer with what the town bought. And the way this works, for those of you who are familiar, energy is a commodity. The standard offer is basically the spot price of that commodity. When we buy through Direct Energy, we're buying forward contracts, basically. We're locking in a price that goes out into the future. So for the first 2 of the last 3 years, to give you an example, the price we locked in through the League of Cities and Towns was 6.67 cents a kilowatt hour. The standard offer reached a high point in the first 3 months of 2015, was 12.4 cents a kilowatt hour. So just a little bit less than half the price. During this year, we had a more or less unexpected weakness in energy prices, and our locked-in price of 9.5 cents that we locked in back when everything was high was a great deal. Now we're at 8.3 cents in the market, so we're actually overpaying. The good news was that Direct Energy came back and said, we realize you're overpaying. So we've locked in, beginning next December, we've locked in 8 cents. So there's always going to be give and take when you buy forward, but the sum total of the last 18 months, the town saved $68,151 by participating in the League of Cities and Towns Energy Purchasing Group. So that's roughly a 25% savings, or 20%, let's call it a 20% savings over the total cost of electricity for the town over that period.
So,
So you're comparing that 266,041 on the far right to the 197,890, and then the savings is in the green bar. And Direct Energy prepared this spreadsheet. I believe I've seen this data before, and it looks the same as it did the first time I saw it.
and this contract goes through December 7th of 17?
No, so we just, because this pricing environment was unfavorable, they came back to us and said, nix the old one, we'll give you a 2-year. We're going to change the pricing for the next 2 years. And so we locked in for 2 years at 8 cents, 8.07 cents. So that contract will run through December of 2019.
2019.
Yeah.
So, and have we ever looked into because in addition to the league, there's also another municipal energy consortium, right? Which is mostly school committees, but municipalities can participate in it. Like Portsmouth doesn't go through REAP. Portsmouth goes through the school committee.
Mm-hmm. We have not looked into it. There are actually an infinite number of, almost infinite number of providers. Constellation Power was big at one time. What happens with people, and the analysis can get tricky because timing is everything in the energy market. So a contract, the first time they quoted us this contract, it was 8.4 cents. Just 2 weeks later, they updated it. It was 8.07 cents. It's very time sensitive. So at the moment, the school department is at the end of a highly beneficial contract. But when they come back, they're going to be back much higher than they're enjoying right now. It's just a result of the timing. You locked in a 3-year price back when the prices were very concessionary. So you benefit from that. But then it's a shock when you come back to the market